See, the note was already on the table when she arrived. See, Caleb Danner never intended to show up. He and Viola Harrow had placed that dinner invitation in Alara Voss's hands the way you'd drop a baited hook into shallow water just to watch something small and desperate bite. See, and now, standing in the entrance of the Copper Crown Hotel in her homemade dress, Alara was holding that note, reading the words written in Caleb's careless handwriting. See, while half the dining room pretended not to stare, and the other half didn't bother pretending at all. See, did you really think someone like him would want to dine with the washerwoman's girl? See, Viola's laughter carried from across the room like something thrown. See, Alara's hand did not shake. That was the thing nobody expected. See, if you have ever sat alone in a room full of people who wanted you to disappear, if you have ever felt your face go hot while you told yourself, don't you dare cry. See, don't you dare give them that, then you already know exactly what Alara Voss felt in that moment. See, and if you've never felt it, consider yourself lucky. See, before we go any further, if this is your first time finding this channel, hit that subscribe button right now and turn on your notifications. See, stories like Alara's don't come around every day, and I would hate for you to miss what happens next. See, drop a comment down below and tell me what city or country you're watching from. I genuinely want to see how far this story travels. See, now let's get back to Alara, because what happens in the next few minutes inside the Copper Crown Hotel is going to change everything. See, the evening had begun the way most terrible evenings do, with hope. See, Alara Voss had spent 40 minutes that afternoon standing in front of the small, cracked mirror that hung above the wash basin in the room she shared with her mother. See, she had pressed her dark blue cotton dress twice, working the iron slowly and carefully along each seam because the fabric was starting to thin at the elbows and she couldn't afford for it to tear. See, she had pinned her dark hair up in the back the way she'd seen the banker's wife do it, not because she was trying to imitate anyone, but because it was the only style she knew how to manage without help. See, her mother, Maeve, had watched her from the doorway. See, Maeve Voss was 41 years old and looked closer to 55. See, her hands, those hands that had pulled Alara through childhood, were wrapped around a mug of weak tea, and the skin across her knuckles was shiny and tight from years of scalding water and lye soap. See, she did laundry for 6 families in Red Willow, 7 if she picked up work from the hotel on Saturdays. See, you look nice, Maeve said. She said it simply, the way tired people say true things. See, Alara turned from the mirror. Don't wait up. I never do, Maeve said, which was a lie and they both knew it. See, Alara walked the 12 blocks to the Copper Crown Hotel because she couldn't afford the carriage and she wasn't about to ask. See, the October wind came down off the mountains mean and early that year, the kind of cold that finds the gaps in whatever you're wearing, and Alara's coat was a year past the point where it did much good. See, but she kept her chin level and her pace steady because she was 18 years old and she had been invited to dinner by Caleb Danner, and for 3 days she had been trying not to think about what that might mean. See, Caleb Danner was not, in any honest accounting, a good person. See, Alara knew that. She was not naive. See, she had watched him in the schoolyard since they were both 12, had observed the way he treated people he considered beneath him, had noted the particular smile he wore when he thought something was funny that wasn't funny to anyone else. See, but he had walked up to her outside the Mercantile on Tuesday afternoon and handed her a small folded card with the Copper Crown's letterhead and said, with that easy confidence that came from never having to work for anything, dinner Friday. See, 7 o'clock. I'd like to get to know you better. See, and Alara, who was smart enough to know better and 22 cents too short on pride, had taken the card. See, she had told herself a dozen reasonable stories between Tuesday and Friday. See, maybe Caleb had simply decided to behave differently. See, people did change. She'd read that somewhere. Or maybe this was exactly what it appeared to be, a young man with money and ease who had noticed a girl with dark eyes and a straight spine and thought, simply, that he wanted to have dinner with her. See, stranger things had happened in smaller towns. She had not told her mother who invited her. See, she had said only that she was meeting a classmate. See, Maeve hadn't pressed. She had learned, somewhere in the long years of survival, that some questions were better left unasked. See, the Copper Crown Hotel was the finest building in Red Willow, which in 1883 meant it had wallpaper and a gas chandelier and tablecloths that were actually white. See, the lobby smelled like wood smoke and something floral that Alara couldn't name. See, the man at the door looked at her coat for exactly 1 second before he looked at her face, and in that 1 second Alara understood several things about the rest of the evening. See, she told him she had a reservation. He checked his book. See, there was in fact a reservation under the name Danner, a table for 2 at 7 o'clock. See, he led her to it without warmth but without outright rudeness, which was its own kind of message. See, she sat down. She waited. See, she kept her hands in her lap and her back straight and her eyes moving, not darting, moving, the way a person moves their eyes when they're paying attention to a room without wanting anyone to know they're paying attention. See, she noted the table of railroad men near the window. See, she noted the family with 3 children whose mother was cutting everyone's meat at once with the efficiency of someone who had done it 10,000 times. See, she noted, with a specific kind of awareness that registered without fully landing, the young man at the adjacent table who had looked up from his menu when she sat down and had not entirely looked away. See, 7 o'clock came and went. The waiter, a thin man with a narrow mustache, and the professional blankness of someone who had been doing this long enough to stop feeling things, appeared at her elbow. See, he asked if she was ready to order. "I'm waiting for someone," Alara said. See, he nodded and withdrew. 7:15. She straightened the silverware on her side of the table. See, straightened it again. She was aware of the room in the particular, exhausting way you become aware of a room when you suspect people are watching you, and you can't decide whether they are or aren't, and whether it's worse if they are. See, 7:20. A boy, a hotel boy, maybe 12 years old, with a cap that was too big for him, appeared at her table holding a folded note. See, he placed it in front of her without a word and disappeared before she could ask who sent it. See, she looked at the note. She picked it up. She unfolded it. See, the handwriting was Caleb's. She had seen it on the homework assignments he occasionally let others copy. The looping, self-satisfied cursive of someone who had been told his penmanship was fine. See, Alara, sorry, something came up. Enjoy the evening. See, that was all. No explanation, no apology that meant anything. See, just 4 words of dismissal wrapped in 11 words of performance. See, she read it twice. Then she set it very carefully on the table beside her fork. See, from across the room, she heard laughter. She didn't have to look. See, she knew the pitch of Viola Harrow's laugh the way you know the sound of something that has been used against you before. See, she heard it in the lower register, the careful version, the one that was designed to carry without appearing to try. See, and then Viola's voice, angled precisely toward her, "Did you really think someone like him would want to dine with the washerwoman's girl?" See, the dining room did not go silent. That was somehow worse. See, life continued. Silverware clinked. Conversations murmured. See, the family near the window, the mother, still cutting meat, didn't even look up. See, the world did not pause to register that something cruel had just been said to a girl who had walked 12 blocks in a thin coat to be publicly humiliated by people who thought it was entertainment. See, Alara's jaw tightened. Just once, just slightly. She did not cry. See, she had made that decision somewhere between reading the note and hearing the laugh. See, the decision was not dramatic or heroic. It was just a door she closed very quietly inside herself and locked. See, the waiter reappeared. He was no longer professionally blank. See, he was professionally impatient, which is a different thing entirely. "See, miss," he said, "I'm afraid we'll need this table." "See, if your party isn't joining you—" "My party isn't joining me," Alara said. "See, then I'm afraid I understand," she said. "I'll just need a moment." See, she was not going to be hurried. She had decided that too. See, she would not scramble. She would not gather herself in a rush of embarrassed motion and bolt for the door while Viola watched. See, she would sit exactly where she was, and she would take exactly as long as she needed to stand up with her back straight and her chin level, and then she would walk out of the Copper Crown Hotel with whatever remained of her dignity, see, which she was currently estimating at somewhere between very little and not much. See, she reached into her small purse. Her fingers found the single silver dollar inside, cool and solid, and exactly as heavy as it had always been. See, she had carried it for months. It was the last of the money she had earned helping old Mrs. See, Farley with her mending over the summer, and she had kept it because spending the last of something always felt like a kind of surrender. See, she placed it on the white tablecloth. 90 cents for a meal she had not eaten. See, 10 cents left over, which was approximately the cost of her dignity at current market rates. And wasn't that a funny thought? And she was not going to laugh, and she was absolutely not going to cry. See, she was reaching for the dollar when the chair across from her scraped back. See, she looked up. The young man from the adjacent table sat down across from her. See, he was 17, maybe 18, she wasn't certain. See, broad across the shoulders in a way that suggested work, not just genetics, though she would later learn it was mostly genetics, which was its own kind of unfair. See, he had dark hair that needed cutting and a jacket that was excellent quality and worn carelessly. See, which told you everything about someone, that the quality of their things didn't impress them because it had never occurred to them that it might not be there. See, he set his menu on the table between them. He looked at the waiter. See, she isn't leaving, he said. His voice was even, not loud. See, not performing. She's having supper with me. The waiter looked at the young man for a moment. See, then he looked at the table across the room where August Calloway was conducting dinner with 3 men from the Eastern Railroad companies, and something shifted in the waiter's expression, a rapid recalibration. See, the kind you do when you realize the power in the room has just declared itself. See, of course, the waiter said, and left. Laura stared at the young man across the table. See, I don't need, she started. I know you don't, he said. See, he didn't look up from the menu. I'm hungry. This table has better light. See, that's all. It was such an obvious lie that she almost respected it. See, you were watching me, she said. I was watching the door, he said. See, you happened to be sitting near it. That's not true either. See, he looked up from the menu then, and she saw something in his face that was not pity she would have recognized and rejected immediately. She was practiced at recognizing pity, but something closer to recognition. See, like he had seen the thing that happened and had made a decision about it, the way you make a decision about something that violates a basic principle you hold. See, no, he said, isn't. A beat of silence. Rhett Calloway, he said. See, the name landed with weight. Everyone in Red Willow knew the Calloway name. See, it was on the deed to 1/3 of the valley's grazing land. See, it was connected to half the political appointments in the territory. See, August Calloway had been called, in the Red Willow Courier, a man who had turned Wyoming dirt into a dynasty, which was the newspaper's way of not saying some of the harder things that were also true. See, Alara looked at this boy, this young man who had just sat across from her at the worst table in the most expensive restaurant in town, and told the waiter she wasn't leaving. See, Alara Voss, she said. I know, he said. How you're in my history class, he said. See, you argued with Professor Hale about the Oregon Trail migration statistics for 11 minutes last Thursday, and you were right about all of it. See, she blinked. You were counting? She said. 11 minutes, he confirmed, with the smallest thing that was almost a smile. See, it was a good argument. She looked down at her silver dollar still sitting on the white tablecloth. See, she looked at the menu in her hands. She looked across the room at where Viola Harrow had gone quiet in a way that meant she was paying very close attention while appearing to pay no attention at all. See, Alara Voss was 18 years old. She had $1 to her name and a mother with scarred hands and a dress that was thinning at the elbows. See, she had just been publicly humiliated by people who thought it was sport. See, and the heir to the most powerful cattle empire in the valley had just sat down across from her and told the room she was staying. See, she did not know, sitting there in that moment, whether to be grateful or furious. See, as it turned out, she was both, and in roughly equal measure, and that was perhaps the most honest beginning to anything she had ever experienced. See, she picked up her menu. Her hands were steady. Outside, the October wind moved down from the mountains, cold and indifferent, the way weather is when it doesn't know what it's interrupting. See, inside the Copper Crown Hotel, in a dining room full of people pretending not to watch, Elara Voss sat across from Rhett Calloway and did not run. See, and from the corner table, through the smoke and the amber lamplight, August Calloway set down his glass and looked at his son with an expression that contained many things, none of them simple, and the evening had barely begun. See, August Calloway was not a man who missed things. See, he had built his empire on exactly that quality, the ability to see what other men overlooked, to read a room the way a tracker reads ground, to understand in 30 seconds what it took other people 30 minutes to figure out. See, he had looked at raw Wyoming territory in 1861 and seen not wilderness but geometry fencing lines, water rights, grazing rotations, railroad corridors that didn't exist yet but would. See, he had been right about all of it. Being right consistently and expensively was the foundation of everything the Calloway name had become. See, so when his son pushed back his chair and crossed to the adjacent table and sat down across from a girl in a homemade dress, August noticed. See, he noticed the note that had been left on the table. See, he noticed the waiter's retreat. He noticed across the room the Harrow girl's expression shift from amusement to something more complicated. See, he set his glass down with the particular deliberateness of a man who was filing information away and returned his attention to the 3 railroad men across the table from him. See, but a portion of his mind, the portion that was always running some quiet parallel calculation, had already begun working on what he'd just seen. See, the railroad men were talking about easements. August listened and responded and did not let them see that part of him was elsewhere. See, at the other table, Elara Voss had picked up her menu. See, Rhett had ordered for both of them without consulting her, which was the kind of instinctive presumption that came from a lifetime of being the person whose preferences were simply assumed to matter. See, he caught himself halfway through and stopped. "Unless you want something different," he said. See, "The roast is fine," Elara said. It wasn't fine. See, she had looked at the prices on the menu, and the roast was $1.40, which was 40 cents more than everything she owned combined, and the awareness of that specific arithmetic sat in her chest like a stone. See, but she was not going to say that. She was not going to perform poverty for Rhett Calloway's benefit, was not going to make a small, embarrassed speech about what she could and couldn't afford so that he could reassure her it was taken care of. See, if she was going to sit at this table, and apparently she was going to sit at it. See, "You don't have to explain yourself," Rhett said, not looking up from his own menu. See, "About the note, I mean. You don't have to tell me what it said." See, "I wasn't going to," Elara said. "Good. I don't know why you're doing this." See, he looked up. Which part? Any of it. He was quiet for a moment, and she got the sense that he was considering whether to give her the real answer or a comfortable one. See, she had met enough people to know the difference between those two pauses. See, because it was wrong, he said finally, what they did. See, it was just wrong. People do wrong things every day, Elara said. See, you don't sit down at all of their tables. No, he said. See, I don't. She waited for more. He didn't offer any, and she found, unexpectedly, that she respected him slightly for that. See, a different kind of boy would have made a speech about fairness and decency. See, Rhett Calloway apparently just acted and then declined to explain himself into a hero. See, the food arrived faster than it should have, which told Elara something about how the kitchen operated when a Calloway was at the table. See, she noted it without comment. They ate in a silence that was not comfortable but was not hostile either. See, it was the silence of two people who were both paying attention and both aware that the other one was paying attention, which created a kind of low-level alertness that was different from ordinary quiet. See, your argument with Hale last Thursday, Rhett said after a few minutes. See, about the migration numbers. What about it? Where did you get the actual figures? He said you were working from outdated sources. See, he was wrong, Ilara said. I used the census records from the territorial office. See, they're public record. He'd been citing a summary that someone published in 1871 that had 2 transcription errors in the original tabulation. See, Rhett looked at her steadily. You went to the territorial office. See, someone has to. That's a 4-hour round trip on foot. See, I know, she said. I made it. He was quiet again. See, then he still gave you a B on the paper. He gave me a B on the paper, Ilara confirmed. See, because I embarrassed him in front of the class by being right, and he couldn't fail me outright because my argument was documented, so he found other things to dock points for. See, your formatting. My formatting, she said with the dry flatness of someone who had fully processed an injustice and filed it in the category of things that were true and unsurprising. See, apparently my margins were a 1/4 inch too wide. See, Rhett set down his fork. He had the expression of someone adding something to a mental ledger they'd been keeping for a long time. See, Hale does that, he said. I know he does. He's never done it to me. See, I know that too, Ilara said, and she met his eyes when she said it, because she wanted him to understand that she wasn't making an accusation, but a simple statement of fact, and that she had long since made peace with facts. See, something moved across Rhett's face, not guilt exactly. See, something more uncomfortable than guilt and more honest. See, the look of someone who has just been shown a corner of a room they've been standing in for years without ever turning to look at it. See, he picked his fork back up. They ate. She was almost finished with the roast when August Calloway appeared at the table. See, he didn't announce himself. He simply materialized the way men with genuine authority move through rooms, without urgency, but without the possibility of being ignored. See, he was perhaps 50, with the kind of face that had probably never been handsome, but had always been arresting. See, his suit was not showy. Everything about him was calibrated to communicate that he didn't need to impress anyone, because impressing people was what people did when they needed something from you. See, he looked at Rhett first. A brief look that communicated several things Ilara couldn't entirely read. See, then he looked at her. Who is your family, he said. See, he didn't sit down. He didn't introduce himself. He asked the question the way you'd ask someone to state the weather, a request for information he considered himself entitled to. See, Ilara looked up at him. Voss, she said. My mother is Maeve Voss. See, nothing in August's expression changed, which told her he didn't recognize the name, which told her something about what category of Red Willow resident her family occupied in his mental geography. See, the unrecognized names, the ones who populated the background of other people's stories. See, what does your father do? August said. My father is dead, Ilara said. See, a brief pause, not sympathy, assessment. And your mother? See, there was a particular way this question could be answered. See, Ilara knew it. She could say her mother ran a home-based business. See, she could say her mother provided textile services. See, she could perform the small dignifying translation that people in her situation were expected to perform. The linguistic sleight of hand that allowed everyone to pretend certain truths weren't exactly what they were. See, she looked at August Calloway, this man who had just walked over from his table without an invitation, who had asked about her family the way you'd review livestock credentials. See, who had not once apologized for the interruption, because it had simply not occurred to him that an interruption required apology, and she made a decision. See, she washes laundry, Ilara said, for 6 families in Red Willow. See, she washes the linens that men like you eat upon. See, the table went very still. Rhett looked at her. His expression was something between alarm and something else she couldn't categorize yet. See, August Calloway looked at her for a long moment. See, he had the quality it was remarkable to witness of a man to whom almost nothing was surprising, because he had long since concluded that the world was predictable and he had simply done the work of understanding its patterns. See, but in this moment, just briefly, something moved behind his eyes that suggested Ilara Voss had been filed into a category he hadn't expected. See, I see, he said. I imagine you do, Alara said. Another pause. See. Then August looked at Rhett. We're leaving in 20 minutes, he said. See. And he walked back to his table. Rhett exhaled. See. You didn't have to do that, he said. See. And his voice was quiet. See. Not scolding. See, I know, Alara said. He'll ask about you. After tonight. See. Let him ask. Rhett looked at her with an expression she would spend a long time trying to accurately name. See. It wasn't admiration, exactly, though there was something of that in it. See, it was more like the look of someone who has just watched a person do something they had themselves have wanted to do for a very long time and never quite managed. See, he said nothing else about it. When the meal was finished, the waiter brought the bill and placed it automatically in front of Rhett, because, of course, he did. See, Alara reached into her purse anyway. She brought out her silver dollar and set it on the table. See, that doesn't cover it, Rhett said, not unkindly. See, I know what it covers, Alara said. It covers my portion. See, there are no portions, I invited you. You sat down at my table, she said. See, you weren't invited either. We're square. He looked at the silver dollar on the white tablecloth. See, he looked at her. Elle don't, she said. It came out with more edge than she intended. See, she softened it slightly. Just don't. I appreciate what you did tonight. See, I genuinely do. But I am not a project. I'm not something that needs fixing. See, I didn't say you were. You didn't have to say it, she said. See, that's how charity works. It doesn't announce itself. See, it just shows up and rearranges things and then expects gratitude for the rearranging. See, he was quiet for a long moment. Outside, somewhere distant, a door opened and the October wind came through briefly before someone closed it again. See, I wasn't trying to rearrange anything, he said finally. See, maybe not, she said. But that's what happens. She stood up. See, she was careful to push her chair back quietly, to straighten her napkin on the table, to do all of it without rush or performance. See, she looked at the silver dollar. Keep it, she said. See, put it toward the bill. Alara, good night, Rhett Calloway, she said. See, she walked out of the Copper Crown Hotel the same way she had walked in spine-straight, chin-level coat, not warm enough. See, the cold hit her in the face like an open hand, and she kept walking, and she did not look back, and she told herself the burning behind her eyes was just the wind. See, she was mostly convinced. The 12 blocks home felt longer in the dark. See, she walked fast, not because she was afraid, but because movement was the only thing that helped when her mind was going the way it went, sometimes circular and relentless, replaying the evening in pieces, see, examining each moment for the thing she should have done differently. See, she should not have sat down. She should have walked out the moment she read the note. See, she should not have let Rhett Calloway's intervention matter to her even for a second, because now she had spent an evening that had begun in humiliation and ended in what? A different kind of humiliation? See, the dignified kind, the kind you walk away from with your head up, which didn't make it not humiliation, it just made it better decorated. See, she pushed open the door to the small room above the laundry. See, Maeve was awake, sitting at the kitchen table with her tea, which was cold by now. See, she looked up when Alara came in. You're back early, Maeve said. See, he didn't come, Alara said. She hung her coat on the hook. See, he sent a note. It was a prank. Maeve was very still for a moment. See, then, who? Caleb Danner and Viola Harrow. Alara sat down across from her mother. See, she looked at Maeve's hands around the mug. Those hands. See, she had been looking at those hands her whole life. See, I sat there for 20 minutes, and then I ended up having dinner with someone else. See, Maeve's eyes were careful and steady. Who? Rhett Calloway. See, the silence that followed was a specific kind of silence, the kind Maeve Voss had perfected over years of encounters with the name Calloway in one form or another. See, the Calloway laundry came on Tuesdays. It was always the most work and always paid the least per item because August Calloway had negotiated the price down 3 years ago, and Maeve had agreed because she couldn't afford to lose the account. See, his idea or yours, Maeve said, his Alara said. See, he sat down across from me. Maeve was quiet for a moment longer. See, then she stood up and carried her mug to the basin. See, go to bed, she said. You've got school tomorrow. See, Mama, go to bed, Elara, Maeve said, and her voice was not unkind, but it was finished with the conversation. See, she set the mug in the basin with the care of someone who handled fragile things all day and could not afford to break them. See, Elara went to bed. She lay in the dark and stared at the ceiling and thought about August Calloway's face when she said the word laundry. See, not shame, not pity, assessment, like she was an equation he was solving. See, she fell asleep sometime after midnight and dreamed of nothing she could remember in the morning. See, Monday arrived the way Mondays always did, at the Red Willow Territorial Academy, with the slow gathering of bodies in the hallway before first bell, the particular social weather of a school week reconstituting itself after 2 days of absence. See, Elara walked in through the main entrance at 8 minutes before 8, same as always, and felt the change in atmosphere before she consciously identified it. See, people were looking at her. Not all of them. Not obviously. See, but in the particular way, news travels through a school the slightly too quick glances, the conversations that paused and then restarted at a different volume. She understood within 30 seconds that the story of Friday evening had preceded her. See, Viola Harrow was standing near the water closet with 2 girls from her circle, and she watched Elara walk past with the expression of someone whose prank had not landed exactly as intended, and who had not yet decided how she felt about that. See, then Viola said it, loud enough, designed to carry. See, I heard the Calloway boy felt sorry for her. Isn't that the saddest thing you've ever heard? A charity dinner. See, poor little washerwoman. Elara stopped walking. She had not planned to stop. See, her body simply stopped, the way a body will sometimes make a decision before the mind has finished deliberating. See, she turned around. Viola had the expression of someone who has thrown something and is watching it arc toward the target, confident in the trajectory. See, Elara walked back toward her. Not fast, not aggressive. See, just directly, the way you walk toward something you've decided to address. See, she stopped in front of Viola and looked at her with a kind of flat, clear attention that had no performance in it. See, you know what I noticed Friday evening, Elara said. See, I noticed that you and Caleb put a lot of work into something that was supposed to be easy. See, you printed the card on hotel letterhead. You reserved the table. See, you showed up to watch. That's real effort, Viola. See, all of that planning, all of that coordination, just to humiliate one girl in a cotton dress. She paused. See, that told me a great deal about what your life is actually like. See, Viola's expression shifted, just slightly. A hairline crack in the composure. See, what I don't have, Elara continued, is a mother who arranges social victories for me. See, what I do have is a mother who works harder than either of your parents has ever had to, and I know which one of those things I'd rather carry. She looked at Viola for one more beat. See, I'm going to class now. She turned and walked away. See, her hands were not shaking. That surprised her a little. See, behind her, she heard nothing from Viola. That surprised her more. See, what she did not see because she was walking away, which was the right thing to do, was that Rhett Calloway had come around the corner at the far end of the hallway, approximately 15 seconds into Elara's response. See, and had stopped walking and had listened to the rest of it. See, she didn't see his expression. She didn't see the way he looked at Viola after Elara turned the corner, a long look that communicated clearly, and without words, that the Calloway opinion of whatever game Viola had been playing was not favorable. See, she was already in her history classroom by the time any of that registered as information she would later piece together from other sources. See, history class was where the second collision of the week occurred, though it arrived slowly enough that she almost didn't recognize it for what it was. See, Professor Hale was a compact man with a trimmed beard and the particular academic confidence of someone who had been the smartest person in his specific room for so long that the room had become his whole world. See, he was not a bad teacher, exactly. He taught the curriculum. See, he covered the dates, the battles, the political movements, The names of the men who signed documents and led armies and drew maps. See, he taught history the way most history was taught in 1883 as a story about the people at the top of things. See, the decision makers, the landowners, the commanders. See, he had assigned a major project 2 weeks prior, a research presentation on the development of the Wyoming frontier. See, every student was to choose a specific angle, develop an argument, and present it before the full class and invited community members in 3 weeks' time. See, on Monday morning, he announced the partners. Elara had been partnered with Clara Maddox, a quiet girl she got along with adequately, and the pairing had been unremarkable enough that she'd mostly forgotten about it until this moment. See, I've made some adjustments, Hale said, scanning his list with the detached authority of someone who does not acknowledge that adjustments require explanation. See, Voss, you'll be working with Calloway. The room went quiet. See, Elara looked up from her notebook. Rhett, 2 rows over, was looking at Hale with an expression of very controlled neutrality. See, the rest of the pairings remain as assigned, Hale said, and moved on to other business before anyone could object, which Elara suspected was intentional. See, after class, in the hallway, Rhett fell into step beside her. See, it wasn't aggressive, he simply matched her pace, which was fast because she was thinking. See, he did that deliberately, Rhett said. Obviously, Elara said. See, do you know why? Because he thinks it'll be funny, she said. See, or instructive, or both. He wants to see what happens when you put the Calloway heir with the laundress's daughter and give them a grade that matters. See, Rhett was quiet for a moment. Or he thinks we'll fail. See, that too, Elara said. Is this all right? We could request a reassignment. See, she stopped walking and looked at him. Could we? See, he considered that. I could, he said. Probably. See, then you'd have to explain why you wanted one, she said. See, and whatever reason you give would be heard a certain way. See, he understood her meaning. See, if he asked to be reassigned away from her, it would be interpreted as a social signal, Rhett Calloway, distancing himself from the laundress's daughter, reasserting the proper order of things after the peculiarity of Friday evening. See, and maybe that was what Hale expected. Maybe that was the lesson Hale intended to teach not to Elara, but to Rhett. See, a quiet reminder of gravity. I don't want a reassignment, Rhett said. See, neither do I, Elara said. They looked at each other in the hallway with the noise of the school morning moving around them. See, and there was a kind of silent agreement made that was not dramatic, and was not a handshake, and was not anything you could have described precisely afterward, but that both of them understood as clearly as if it had been spoken. See, library, Elara said. Wednesday afternoon. I have work until 4, but I can be there by 4:30. See, what work? Rhett said. I help Mrs. Farley with her mending on Wednesdays, she said. See, it came out without embarrassment because she had long since stopped performing embarrassment about the things she did to help her mother keep them housed and fed. See, 4:30. Don't be late. He wasn't late. She was by 10 minutes because Mrs. See, Farley's arthritis was bad that week, and the mending had taken longer than expected. See, and Elara arrived at the library with her fingers still slightly stiff from needlework to find Rhett already there with 3 books open on the table and what appeared to be a page and a half of notes. See, she sat down across from him. She looked at the books he'd chosen. See, she looked at his notes. These are all about land grants and railroad financing, she said. See, that's what Hale said the project should cover, Rhett said. See, that's what Hale said the project could cover, Elara said. See, she pulled off her coat and hung it over the back of her chair. See, there's a difference. He looked at her. What angle were you thinking? See, she had been thinking about it since Monday. See, she had been thinking about it, if she was honest, since she had sat in that dining room on Friday evening and felt the weight of everyone in the room deciding what category she belonged to and what that meant about where she was allowed to sit. See, she had been thinking about the frontier not as the story Hale told the story of the men who acquired it, the ones whose names went on the deeds and the historical records, but as the story of everyone else. See, the people whose labor had made all of that acquisition possible. See, the people who did not appear in land grant documents. See, the people whose names were on nothing except the graves. See, she told Rhett what she was thinking. He listened without interrupting, which she noted and appreciated. See, when she finished, he was quiet for a moment. Hale won't like it, he said. See, I know. The families he's invited to the presentation won't like it either. See, half of them made their money the same way my father did. See, I know that too. He looked at her. You want to do it anyway. See, I want to do something true, she said. I'm tired of doing things that aren't true just because they're safer. See, he was quiet again. And then something shifted in his expression, a kind of resolving, like a question answering itself. See, he picked up his pencil. All right, he said. Tell me more about what you're thinking. See, she told him. And he listened. See, and across the library table, in the yellow lamplight of a Wednesday afternoon in October, something began that neither of them would have had an adequate name for yet a collaboration. Yes, but more specifically, a recognition. See, the slow dawning awareness that another person, coming from the absolute opposite direction, has arrived at the same fundamental conclusion about the world you live in. See, it was not simple. It would not be simple. Elara knew that. See, she had no illusions about what it meant to partner with a Calloway on something like this. No comfortable assumption that their interests aligned because they'd had one difficult niner and 2 hallway conversations. See, she had watched enough of the world to know that people could agree in private and behave very differently in public, and that the Calloway name carried obligations she couldn't fully see. See, but he had shown up to the library on time. He had made notes. See, he had listened without interrupting. It was not much. See, it was also not nothing. Outside the library windows, October was deepening toward November. See, the days were getting shorter. The wind off the mountains had developed the particular that old-timers in Old Redwillow called the first warning, the early cold that told you the real cold was coming and you had better be ready. See, inside, Elara Voss and Rhett Calloway bent their heads over books about a frontier that had been written by people like August Calloway, and began, quietly and carefully, and with considerable disagreement about method, if not direction, see, to figure out how to tell the story of everyone the books left out. See, 3 days later, Rhett didn't come to lunch in the academy dining room. See, Elara noticed because she was observant, and because she had begun, involuntarily, to register his presence and absence the way you begin to register certain things once they've entered your field of attention. See, she didn't think much of it. People missed lunch. See, but then she heard, from 2 tables over, the particular tightened voice of James Pruitt telling someone that Rhett Calloway had been pulled out of morning classes by a messenger from the Calloway main house. See, and that the word was August had business he needed his son present for. See, the way James said business had a specific weight. See, the appreciative weight of someone describing power being exercised. See, Elara went back to her food. That afternoon, she was in the library alone when Rhett came in 40 minutes late. See, he sat down across from her without removing his coat, which she noticed, because it was a marker. The coat staying on was the body language of someone who hadn't yet decided to be fully present. See, he said nothing for a moment. Long morning, she said, without looking up from the census records she'd been cross-referencing. See, my father wants me to withdraw from the project, he said. See, Elara looked up. He had lunch with Hale, Rhett said. See, apparently Hale mentioned the new pairing. My father he has concerns. See, about the project? Elara said. About the partnership, Rhett said, and his voice was level and careful, and she could hear the effort behind the levelness. See, about the optics of it, about what it communicates to the community if the Calloway name is attached to an argument that I'm paraphrasing challenges the foundations of how this valley was built. See, Elara set down her pencil. He said that, she said. See, he said a version of that, Rhett said. My father doesn't usually say things directly. See, he says them sideways, and then you're expected to understand the whole shape of what he means from the part he's willing to say out loud. See, she looked at him across the library table. He still had his coat on. See, he was looking at the census records between them without seeing them. See, what are you going to do? She said. He looked up. See, and she saw in his face something she hadn't expected to find there, not certainty, which would have been easy, but a genuine, unresolved struggle. See, the face of someone caught between two things that both had claims on him, and who had not yet decided which claim was stronger. See, I don't know yet, he said. It was the most honest thing he had said to her. See, she recognized it as such. Take your coat off, she said. See, we have 2 weeks left. He looked at her for a moment longer. See, then he took off his coat and hung it over the back of his chair. See, he picked up his pencil. They worked until the library closed. See, and Alara walked home in the dark, thinking about men like August Calloway, who built walls they called fortresses, and boys like Rhett who had been born inside them, and what it cost a person to look at the walls they'd been handed and decide, see, slowly and imperfectly, and without complete certainty, that they were going to do something different. See, she didn't have an answer. She wasn't sure there was one answer. See, she had a census record and a growing list of names that didn't appear in any history book. See, and a project that was either going to be the most important thing she'd done in school or a disaster that Hale would grade her down for on the basis of margin width. See, she walked 12 blocks home. The cold was the real kind now, not a warning. See, the kind that meant what it said. She opened the door. See, Maeve was asleep at the table, her head on her arms, a half-finished pile of mending beside her. See, Alara stood in the doorway for a moment, looking at her mother's hands resting open on the table. See, the scarred palms, the swollen knuckles. She got a blanket from the room and laid it over her mother's shoulders without waking her. See, then she sat down at the other end of the table and opened her notebook and worked until the lamp burned low. See, the 2 weeks before the presentation were the strangest of Alara's life, and she had lived through some strange ones. See, every afternoon except Sunday, she and Rhett met in the library. See, sometimes for 2 hours, sometimes for 4. The librarian, a thin woman named Mrs. See, Cord, who had worked in that building for 23 years and had long since developed the ability to be present in a room without being intrusive in it, occasionally brought them tea without being asked and left without comment. See, Alara suspected Mrs. Cord had seen enough of what happened in that library, enough late evenings, enough bent heads, enough arguments conducted in urgent whispers over open books to understand when something real was occurring. See, their argument developed unevenly, which was how arguments developed when they were worth anything. See, they agreed on the premise immediately, and then disagreed, sometimes sharply, on nearly everything else. See, Alara wanted to go further than Rhett thought was strategically wise. See, she had assembled, from territorial census records and county tax documents, and the handwritten ledgers that the Red Willow Courier had published as historical records over the years. See, a portrait of the frontier's working population that was detailed enough to be undeniable and damaging enough to be uncomfortable. See, she had names, she had dates. She had the specific arithmetic of what a ranch laborer earned in a year versus what that year of labor added to a landholding's assessed value. See, the gap between those two numbers was not a rounding error. See, it was a philosophy. You want to put the numbers on the board, Rhett said one Wednesday evening, pointing at her ledger. See, in front of August Calloway, in front of whoever shows up, Alara said. See, your father isn't the point. He'll be there. The railroad men will be there. See, Hale invited the county commissioner. Good, Alara said. See, let them all see it. Rhett leaned back in his chair and pressed his hands over his face for a moment, not exasperated, exactly, but carrying something. See, she had learned to read his silences with some accuracy by now. See, this one was the silence of a person doing math that wasn't entirely mathematical. See, if we present this in the way you're describing, he said, with the specific ranch names and the specific wage records, my father will know within 5 minutes that I gave you access to information from inside our operations. See, Alara looked at him. Did you? The county tax records are public. See, but some of what you're working with the labor contract structures, I explained those to you from memory. See, from things I know, You didn't give me documents, she said. See. No, he said. But he'll know I explained it. He'll recognize the shape of the argument. See. She was quiet for a moment. Is that a reason to change the argument? See. He looked at the ceiling. He looked at the table. He looked at her. See. No, he said, it isn't. It was not said with confidence. See. It was said with the particular flatness of someone who has made a decision and knows its cost and is going forward anyway, which was, in Alara's experience, the only kind of decision that actually meant anything. See, they kept working. The argument had two halves, and this was Rhett's contribution, the recognition that what they were building wasn't just an indictment, but a structure, and that a structure needed two walls. See, Alara's half they eventually called, in their private shorthand, the invisible hands. See, the people who built the frontier without appearing in its history. See, the laundresses and the ranch hands and the railroad crews and the widows who ran boarding houses and the families who farmed land they would never legally own. See, the people whose labor was the actual foundation of everything that got written about in newspapers and commemorated in speeches. See, Rhett's half took him longer to articulate. Alara watched him circle it for 3 days before he found the language, and when he found it, she understood immediately that it had cost him something to do so. See, he called it the golden cage. He explained it to her on a Thursday afternoon while rain hit the library windows and misses. See, Cord had gone home early on account of a cold, and they had the building to themselves. See, he explained it without drama, which was the thing that made it land so hard. See, he described what it was like to grow up inside the Calloway name. See, the way August had raised him not with cruelty exactly, but with a specific, systematic education in the mechanics of power. See, the belief, demonstrated daily through August's behavior, and then explained explicitly when Rhett was old enough for August to consider the lessons worth having, that compassion was not a virtue, but a vulnerability. See, that people who needed things from you were not to be helped, but managed. See, that sentiment was what weak men used to explain their failures. See, he didn't beat it into me, Rhett said. He was looking at the rain on the window, not at her. See, that's not how he operated. He just showed me. Every interaction, every decision, every dinner conversation. See, the world worked a certain way, and the Calloways understood that world better than other people, and our job was to be clear-eyed about it. He paused. See, I grew up thinking clear-eyed meant the same thing as cold. See, Alara watched him. She had spent enough time with him now to trust the difference between Rhett performing honesty and Rhett being honest. And this was the second thing. See, he was not performing. He was working something out. See, when did you start thinking they weren't the same? She said. See, he turned from the window and looked at her. I'm not sure I'm done thinking that yet, he said. See, it was the kind of answer that would have frustrated her 2 weeks ago. See, now she understood it as the most accurate thing he could have said. See, she wrote it down, not the words, but the idea, the golden cage. See, the way inherited power could trap the person who inherited it just as thoroughly as poverty trapped the people it touched, except that the trap was gilded and comfortable, and the person inside it was expected to feel lucky. See, and that expectation that you were supposed to feel lucky, were supposed to be grateful for the walls, because the walls were made of money, was perhaps the cruelest part of it, because it made resistance seem like ingratitude. See, it made a boy who wanted something different feel like a boy who was throwing away a gift. See, you could just inherit it, Alara said, not unkindly. See, a lot of people would. I know, he said, it would be easier. See, I know that too. Then why aren't you? He looked at her for a long moment. See, you walked out of the Copper Crown that night, he said, owing nothing to anyone. See, I watched you do it, and I thought he stopped. See, started again. You didn't have anything. By every measure my father uses to assess a person, you had nothing. See, and you walked out of that room like you were the one who owned it. He shook his head slightly. See, I have been handed everything, Alara, and I have never once walked into a room feeling like it belonged to me. See, because somewhere underneath all of it, I understand that what was handed to me was built on something I didn't do and can't fully account for. See, and you can't actually own a thing you can't account for. See, You're just holding it for a while. The rain on the windows was steady and indifferent. See, Elara looked at this young man across the library table, this boy who had too much and still understood, on some level that August had not managed to fully extinguish. See, that too much was its own kind of problem, and she felt something that was not quite sympathy and not quite kinship, but something in the territory of both. See, write that down, she said. What you just said, as close to those words as you can get. See, that's not academic language, he said. No, she said. See, it's better. He wrote it down. The project assembled itself over the remaining days the way things assemble when two people are genuinely trying imperfectly. See, with arguments and false starts, and at least one evening where Elara walked home furious because Rhett kept pulling the language back from the edge she wanted it to go to. See, and at least one morning where Rhett arrived at the library tight-jawed because August had been at him again over breakfast, and the residue of that conversation was still sitting on him. See, that morning, 8 days before the presentation, Elara arrived to find Rhett already there, same as the first Wednesday, coat still on, looking at nothing. She sat down. She did not ask what August had said. See, she had learned not to ask directly, because the direct question made him clench up in a way that wasn't useful. See, instead she opened her notebook and looked at the page and said, "We need to fix the transition between your section and mine." See, it's too abrupt right now. The argument about labor value needs to connect back to the cage idea before we move to the conclusion. See, he looked at her. Something in his face shifted that thing that happens when someone gives you exactly what you need, which was not comfort and not distraction, but work. See, something to do, something real. "Show me," he said. See, he took off his coat, they worked. See, and somewhere in the middle of the afternoon, while they were arguing about a specific sentence, construction, Elara wanted active voice, Rhett thought the passive construction was actually stronger in that particular context. See, they went back and forth about it for 11 minutes, which she noted without saying. So Rhett looked up and said, without transition, he threatened to pull my enrollment. See, Elara stopped writing. "August," Rhett said. "This morning." See, he said if I presented this project the way we're building it, he would consider whether the academy was still the right environment for me. He said it flatly. The way he said things, he had already processed past the point of visible emotion. See, which means he'd pull me out and hire a private tutor, and I'd spend the next 2 years learning how to run cattle operations and reading whatever he considered appropriate curriculum. See, Elara was quiet for a moment. "Can he do that?" "He pays the tuition," Rhett said. See, so yes, would he actually do it? Rhett was quiet. See, "I don't know," he said. Probably he was making a point. See, testing where the line is, he looked at his notes. See, my father tests things. He's always testing things. See, it's how he understands the world. He finds the edge of something and pushes on it to see if it holds. See, and does it, Elara said. He looked at her. See, "I'm still here." She held his gaze for a moment. "Rhett, I need to ask you something honestly." See, "All right, is this worth it to you?" "Not to me. I have nothing to lose except a grade that Hale will dock for margin width regardless." See, "But you have things to lose that are real. I need to know whether we're doing this because you actually believe in it or because you're angry at your father, and this is a way to be angry that has a grade attached to it." See, he didn't answer immediately, which she took as a sign of seriousness. See, a less thoughtful person would have answered right away. See, a less honest person would have answered the right way. See, he sat with the question. "Both," he said finally. See, "Is that good enough?" "It's honest," she said. "I'll take honest." See, "Both," he repeated. "I believe in the argument. I also know it makes my father uncomfortable." See, "And I'm not going to pretend those two things aren't connected for me." See, "But if I look at the argument itself, independent of him, independent of everything it's right, Elara. See, what you found in those census records, what it actually costs a man to spend his life building something he'll never own a piece of. See, that's not a political position, that's just arithmetic." See, she nodded. "Okay," she said. "Then let's fix this transition." See, the The presentation was held on a Friday afternoon in the Academy's main hall, a long room with tall windows and wooden benches that smelled of chalk dust and linseed oil and the specific staleness of a room that was only fully aired out a few times a year. The benches filled gradually from 1:30 onward. Alara watched from backstage, which was really just a side door as the community members arrived. She spotted the county commissioner in the third row. She spotted two of August's railroad men near the back. She spotted Viola Harrow sitting with her mother, who had the upright posture of someone attending a cultural event and intending to be seen attending it. She spotted August Calloway arrive at 10 minutes to 2 and take a seat in the second row with the particular settled authority of a man who understood that sitting in the second row rather than the first communicated exactly the right kind of confident modesty. He did not look toward the side door. He didn't need to. Rhett appeared beside Alara at the side door. "He's here," she said. "I saw," Rhett said. He was looking at his notes, though she suspected he had them memorized by now. "How are you?" "Terrible," he said, which was the most honest single-word answer she'd received from him in 3 weeks, and which made her almost laugh. "Good," she said. "Terrible means it matters, does it?" "In my experience," she said, "the things that feel fine beforehand are never the important ones." He looked at her. "Is that something your mother told you?" "My mother told me, don't iron the same seam twice. It weakens the fabric." She folded her notes. "I worked the rest out myself." He almost smiled. "The other presentations came first." 4 pairs before them. The presentations were competent and careful and covered exactly the ground Hale had laid out in the assignment: railroad financing, land grant policy, the political maneuvering behind territorial legislation. They were the presentations of students who had understood what was expected and delivered it accurately. The audience received them with the polite, slightly unfocused attention of people who were largely already familiar with the material. Alara and Rhett were last. They walked out together, and she felt the temperature of the room change in the subtle way that rooms change when something unexpected enters them. She was aware of August in the second row without looking at him. She was aware of Viola. She was aware of Hale at the side of the room with his arms folded and his face arranged in the careful neutrality of a man who did not yet know whether he was witnessing something he needed to stop. Alara spoke first. She had written her section and rewritten it 4 times, and the version she delivered was the 5th draft, which was leaner than the first 4 and more honest than any of them. She did not begin with dates or legislation or the names of men who signed documents. She began with a question. "How many names do you know," she said, "of the people who washed the clothes of the men in this room's fathers?" Silence. She let it sit for exactly 3 seconds. "I found some of them," she said, "in the county records. In the census ledgers. In the tax documents that nobody reads because they're full of names that never made the newspaper." She opened her ledger. Margaret Hoyle. She washed laundry for 4 Red Willow families from 1,871 to 1,883. 12 years. She died last February. Her name appears once in the Courier in a list of residents paying poll tax in 1,879. That is the only time the public record acknowledges that Margaret Hoyle existed. She looked up. She is not an exception. She is the rule. She moved through the names methodically, not with sentiment, but with the precision of someone presenting evidence. She had chosen her names carefully, people who were genuinely invisible in the official record, people whose labor was the actual substrate of the valley's economy, people who appeared in no deed and no newspaper profile and no commemorative speech. She laid them out, one by one, the way you lay out documents in a legal case. Here is the evidence. Here is what it demonstrates. The room was very quiet. When she reached the labor wage analysis, the specific arithmetic of what a man earned versus what his labor was worth to the enterprise that employed him, she felt rather than saw Hale shift at the side of the room. She kept going. She put the numbers on the board. she did not editorialize. See, she let the gap speak. Then Rhett stepped forward. See, he had told her he was nervous about his half. Not about the argument he believed the argument, but about the act of standing in front of August Calloway and saying certain things. See, she had told him that the nervousness meant he understood the stakes, and understanding the stakes was different from being paralyzed by them, and the difference was the thing that mattered. See, he looked good, she noticed irrelevantly. He always looked like someone who hadn't tried, but he'd pressed his jacket, and his hair was combed, and there was something in the way he stood, not the ease of a person without stakes. See, but the deliberate stillness of a person managing something internal very carefully that communicated seriousness without performing it. See, he began with the cage. He did not name his father. See, he did not name the Calloway ranches. He spoke in the general language of inheritance and obligation, and the systems that power built to perpetuate itself. See, but every person in that room over the age of 30 understood exactly what personal territory he was mapping, because the general language was specific enough, and because Rhett Calloway was standing there saying it, and that was context enough. See, there is a story we tell in this territory, he said, about the men who built it. See, it is a story about vision and will and the courage to take something from nothing. See, and that story is not false. He paused, but it is incomplete. See, because what those men took was not from nothing. See, it was from labor they did not fully compensate, and from land whose prior claims they did not fully honor, and from the accumulated invisible effort of every person my partner has named in the first half. See, of this presentation. He let that sit for a moment. See, and the thing about an empire built that way, built on what it didn't pay for, is that it doesn't just trap the people it undercompensates. See, it traps the people who inherit it too, because you cannot fully own what you cannot fully account for. See, and you cannot account for what you've never looked at directly. See, he looked up from his notes, not at the room generally. See, at August. An empire built without dignity, he said, eventually becomes another kind of prison. See, the room did not respond immediately. There was a beat, 2 beats of the specific silence that happens when a room full of people has just processed something they weren't expecting and is collectively deciding how to respond to it. See, then from somewhere in the middle of the room, someone began to clap. See, it was not enthusiastic at first. It was careful, the slow, considered clapping of someone who is testing the temperature, who is deciding whether to be the person who does this or whether to wait. See, one person. Then, from the other side of the room, another. See, and another. Within 30 seconds, the hall was applauding in the way that rooms applaud when they've heard something that cut through the comfortable surface of things and touched something real underneath it. See, Alara stood at the front of the room and felt the sound of it moving through her chest and thought somewhat absurdly about margin width. See, she glanced at Hale. His arms were no longer folded. See, his face was the face of a man rapidly recalculating. See, she looked at the second row. August Calloway was standing. See, not applauding, standing. See, while the room around him filled with sound, August Calloway stood in the second row with his hands at his sides and looked at his son at the front of the room with an expression that Alara could not fully read from this distance. See, it was not pride. It might have contained something in the neighborhood of pride. See, but it was accompanied by other things, things that tightened the line of his jaw and straightened his spine and made his stillness look less like calm and more like the controlled motionlessness of a man. See, exerting considerable effort to stay exactly where he was. See, Rhett looked back at him. The applause continued. August sat down. See, after the presentation, in the hallway outside the main hall, while other students and their families filed past, with the social warmth that follows a public event, see, Alara stood against the wall with her notes in her hand and felt the particular hollow that sometimes came after something big, the drop in elevation, after you've been very high up. See, Rhett found her there. Hale hasn't spoken to me yet, he said. See, he will, Alara said. He looked like someone whose carefully planned dinner party has just been crashed by people he didn't invite. See, that's essentially what happened. He leaned against the wall beside her. See, not close. Side by side. She was aware of the specific quality of his silence now. This one was not the unresolved silence from earlier that week, but something more settled. See, the silence of someone who has done the thing and is now simply standing in the aftermath of it, breathing. See, my father is going to want to speak with me tonight, he said. See, I know. It isn't going to be a pleasant conversation. See, I know that too. He was quiet for a moment. Are you worried about it? See, she considered the question. About you? About any of it? See, about what happens next. She thought about the census records she'd spent weeks compiling. See, she thought about Margaret Hoyle, who had washed laundry for 12 years and died with her name appearing once in the public record. See, she thought about her mother asleep at the kitchen table with her hands open on the wood. See, I'm worried about Hale's grading rubric, she said. See, Rhett looked at her. Then he laughed, a real one, short and surprised out of him, the kind of laugh that happens before you've decided to laugh, and it was so unexpectedly unguarded that Alara found herself smiling despite everything. See, margin width, he said. Margin width, she confirmed. See, from down the hallway, moving through the dispersing crowd, with the particular unhurried purposefulness of a man who knew every room would wait for him, August Calloway was approaching. See, Alara straightened, not from fear, from the specific, practiced alignment she had developed over 18 years of being in rooms where she was not expected and was going to be there anyway. See, August stopped in front of them both. He looked at Rhett first, and whatever passed between them in that look was compressed and dense, and carried the weight of years of a specific relationship that Alara could witness but not fully enter. See, then August looked at her. She met his eyes. He was quiet for a moment. See, your research, he said finally. The wage analysis. See, where did you source the labor contract structures? See, county tax records, Alara said. Public filing from 1,875 through last year. See, the territorial census, supplemental data from 1,880. See, and some figures I worked out from the assessed value records and crop yield reports the Courier published annually. See, he looked at her. That's it? That's it, she said. See, it was true. The specific shape of the argument had come partly from things Rhett had explained, but the documented evidence was entirely from public record. See, she had been careful about that from the beginning. See, August was quiet for another moment. He was looking at her with that assessment quality she'd noticed at the Copper Crown, the equation-solving look. See, but something in it had shifted slightly. It was less dismissive than before. See, it was the look of someone updating a calculation. See, you went to the territorial office, he said. Yes. See, on foot. It was a 4-hour walk, she said. Round trip. See, he looked at her for a long beat. Then he looked at Rhett. See, something moved across his face, not approval exactly, and not warmth. See, but something that was perhaps the beginning of the recognition that he was dealing with something he hadn't adequately accounted for. See, he said nothing else. He turned and walked away down the hallway, the crowd opening around him out of habit. See, Rhett exhaled beside her. That when he started. See, don't, Alara said. Don't say it went well. We have no idea how it went. See, no, he agreed. We don't. They stood in the emptying hallway, the sound of the academy settling around them, the late afternoon light coming through the windows at a low angle that turned everything slightly golden. See, which was the kind of thing you noticed and then felt faintly embarrassed for noticing. See, Alara picked up her satchel. I need to get home, she said. See, my mother will have left supper. Alara, Rhett said. See, she stopped. He was looking at her with that expression she still hadn't found the right word, for it had more components now than it had had 3 weeks ago, which was its own kind of information. See what we did today, he said. The project, it mattered. See, I know, she said. I mean beyond the grade, beyond Hale. See, beyond my father. He searched for the right words, and she could see him searching, could see the effort of trying to say something true without letting it tip into something grandiose. See, I feel like I've been in that library every afternoon with someone who is genuinely actually not afraid of the true version of things. See, and that stopped. Start it again. That's not common. See, Alara looked at him. You're better at this than you think, she said. See, it came out simply because it was simply true. The argument. See, the golden cage. That was real. The room felt it. See, your part was better. Different, she said. Not better. See, it takes both. He nodded. She walked home. The evening was cold and getting colder, and the light had the particular quality of late autumn, low and reddish and honest, the kind of light that doesn't hide much. See, she walked with her satchel on her shoulder and her notes under her arm, and she thought about Margaret Hoyle and about the wagon-wide gap between what labor earned and what labor was worth. See, and she thought about Rhett standing at the front of the room, saying an empire built without dignity eventually becomes another kind of prison, and she thought the look on August Calloway's face when he asked her about her sourcing. See, he had asked because he was checking whether his son had given her internal information. See, that was the first reason. But there was a second reason underneath it. She had recognized it in the specific quality of his attention. See, he had asked because the wage analysis had been accurate. See, not directionally accurate, precisely accurate. He had recognized his own operations in the numbers she had assembled from public documents, and that recognition had done something to the equation he was running in his head. See, she didn't know yet what it had done. She wouldn't know for some time. See, she pushed open the door to the room above the laundry and found her mother at the stove, stirring something that smelled like the soup she made from whatever was left in the larder at the end of the week, not a recipe so much as a philosophy. See, Maeve looked up. How was it? She said. Alara set her satchel down. See, she sat at the kitchen table. She looked at her hands. See, I think we did something real today, she said. Maeve studied her for a moment with the particular attention of a woman who had learned to read her daughter's face across 18 years of both of them, trying to protect the other from worry. See, whatever she saw there, she turned back to the stove. See, soup's ready, she said. See, they ate together in the small kitchen, and outside the window, Red Willow moved through its Friday evening. And somewhere across town, August Calloway was sitting down to dinner with whatever thoughts the afternoon had left him with. See, and Rhett was facing whatever conversation his father had prepared. And Viola Harrow was probably saying something cutting to someone about today's proceedings, and none of that could be controlled or predicted or prayed away. See, what could be done was what Alara had always done, the work that was in front of her with the materials she had in the time available. See, she helped Maeve clear the table. She sat down with her notebook. See, she started writing. The conversation between August Calloway and his son that Friday evening lasted 2 hours and 14 minutes. See, Rhett knew this because the clock on the study mantelpiece was the kind that chimed the quarter hour, and he counted everyone. See, it was the kind of thing you did when you were sitting across from your father in a room where the air had the specific density of accumulated authority, where every book on every shelf and every piece of furniture and every portrait on the wall had been selected to communicate something about the Calloway family's position in the world, and you needed something neutral to anchor your attention to so that you didn't lose track of yourself entirely. See, August did not shout. He never shouted. Shouting was what men did when they had lost control of a situation, and August had built his life on the premise that he never lost control of situations. See, he sat behind his desk in the way he always sat, straight, unhurried, the posture of a man who understood that stillness communicated more than movement, and he looked at his son and he talked. See, he talked about legacy. He talked about what the Calloway name meant in this territory and what it had cost to build that meaning, and how meaning of that kind was not permanent but had to be actively maintained. See, he talked about perception and how perception, in the world of commerce and land and influence, was not separate from reality, but was in many respects the more durable of the two. See, he talked about the railroad men who had been in the audience and what they would have taken away from the presentation and what that might mean for negotiations currently in progress. See, he did not say, "You embarrassed me." He said, "You jeopardized things." See, Rhett sat in the chair across from the desk and listened. See, he had learned to listen to August, the way you learn to read difficult terrain, not just the surface of what was being said, but the geography underneath it, the shape of the concern. See, the particular contour of where the pressure was actually coming from. See, the pressure tonight was not entirely where August was pointing. See, the girl, August said, approximately 40 minutes into the conversation. See, he had been building toward it. Voss. Her name is Alara, Rhett said. See, August paused, a small pause, the kind that registered and moved on. See, she did the wage analysis from public record. Yes. See, I checked, August said, after the presentation. See, I had Simmons pull the county tax records. Everything she cited was sourced correctly. See, the figures were accurate. He looked at Rhett, which means she spent weeks in the Territorial Records Office assembling information that my own accountants have not compiled in that form. See, Rhett said nothing. She walked there, August said. See, 4 hours, on foot, yes. August was quiet for a moment. See, then where did she learn to do that kind of analysis? See, she taught herself, Rhett said, from whatever she could get her hands on. See, she borrows books from the library and returns them in a week and then comes back for more. See, she's been doing it since she was 12, without formal instruction. See, Professor Hale gave her a B, Rhett said, with a flatness that communicated exactly what he thought of that. See, August looked at him for a long moment. The clock chimed the 3/4 hour. See, she's not the point, Rhett said. I know she's not the point, August said. See, the point is what you did with the platform that was handed to you today. See, the point is that you stood in front of the county commissioner and railroad investors and the most influential families in this valley, and you delivered an argument that characterized the foundation of this family's holdings as morally deficient. See, I characterized a system, Rhett said. I didn't name anyone. See, you didn't need to name anyone, August said. Everyone in that room knew exactly what territory you were mapping. See, then maybe that's useful information, Rhett said. See, if everyone in the room knew exactly what territory I was mapping, that means everyone in the room already knows the territory exists. See, the only question is whether anyone says it out loud. See, the silence that followed was longer than the previous ones. See, August looked at his son with the full attention of a man who was genuinely, if reluctantly, recalibrating. See, you want to tell me, August said slowly, that silence about an existing problem is worse than acknowledgement of it. See, I want to tell you that the problem Alara documented isn't theoretical, Rhett said. See, it's in our operations right now. The Henderson Ranch has had 4 different foremen in 3 years because we can't keep experienced workers past 2 seasons. See, the Millstone property turned over half its hands last spring. See, Simmons told you the turnover was market fluctuation. See, it isn't. It's that the men who build something for us don't have any stake in what they've built, and eventually they leave for someone who'll give them one. See, he had prepared this part, not in a calculated way, not in the way August would have prepared an argument, with the careful structure of someone building toward a predetermined conclusion. See, he had prepared it the way you prepare for something you've been thinking about for a long time and have finally decided to say, not polished, but organized. See, he had the numbers because Alara had shown him how to find them. See, August's eyes narrowed slightly. Where did you get the Henderson turnover figures? See, from the operational reports you ceded to Simmons last quarter, Rhett said. See, you leave them on your desk. I read them. A beat. See, you've been reading my operational reports, August said. See, for 2 years, Rhett said, since you started leaving them out. See, another pause, and in this one Alara would have recognized if she had been present, which she wasn't something she had observed in August at the presentation. The rapid, quiet recalibration of a man updating a calculation about something he thought he had understood. See, I left them out because I expected you to read them, August said, and his voice had shifted slightly, not softer, but less fortified. See, I was beginning to wonder if you had. Rhett looked at his father. See, then you know the Henderson numbers are real. I know the Henderson numbers are a management problem, August said. See, they're a structural problem, Rhett said. You can change the foreman every year, or you can change what we're offering. See, the foreman's solution is what we've been trying. It hasn't worked. See, and what exactly are you proposing instead? This was the moment Rhett had been building toward and had been most uncertain about. See, not because he didn't believe the idea, he had believed it with increasing conviction over the past 3 weeks. See, partly because Alara kept pressure testing it and it kept holding, but because proposing it to August required him to speak not as a student with a history project, but as someone with genuine skin in the operation. See, and that was a different register, and he wasn't certain he could sustain it. See, he sustained it. He proposed what he had worked out in the library margins, while Alara compiled her census data across the table from him. See, long-term workers men who had been with a Callaway operation for 3 years or more would receive a small profit share from the seasons they contributed to. See, workers who stayed for 7 years or more would have the option to purchase, at a reduced rate, a parcel of land from the less productive edges of the ranch holding. See, not a gift, a purchase, with terms structured so that the payments came out of the profit share they'd already accumulated. See, it would cost something. He was not pretending it wouldn't cost something. See, but the Henderson Ranch was already losing money to turnover in recruitment, in training, in the productivity gap of a crew that was constantly relearning the land. See, what he was proposing would cost less than the problem it was solving. See, he had the numbers for that too. August listened. He did not interrupt. See, this, Rhett knew, was a sign of something his father interrupted readily when he'd already decided something was wrong. See, the absence of interruption meant the calculus was live. See, when Rhett finished, the room was quiet. This is her idea, August said. See, it's our idea, Rhett said. We worked it out together. See, she's 18. She's also the person who figured out your wage structures from public record faster and more accurately than your own accounting staff, Rhett said. See, I'd be careful about using her age as a reason to dismiss the argument. See, August looked at his son for a long time. The clock chimed. See, one ranch, August said finally. Rhett went very still. See, what? One property. The Henderson operation, since you've made it your example. August's voice had the quality of a man making a decision he was not entirely comfortable with but had concluded was the least bad available option. See, you will run the pilot yourself. You will report to me quarterly. See, if productivity improves and costs are managed within acceptable variance over 12 months, we discuss expanding the model. See, if it fails, it fails, Rhett said. See, I understand. If it fails, August continued as though Rhett hadn't spoken, we return to standard operations, and you defer to my judgment on structural questions for the remainder of your time under this roof. See, Rhett looked at his father, and if it succeeds, then we have a conversation, August said. See, he picked up his pen, which was his signal that a meeting was concluded. See, tell your girl to keep her research. She may need it. See, she's not my girl, Rhett said, standing. Then correct me when it's accurate, August said without looking up. See, Rhett left the study. He stood in the hallway outside the closed door for a moment, his back against the wall, the house around him quiet and enormous and smelling of wood and the particular dusty formality of old money. See, he felt something he couldn't immediately name not triumph, because one ranch was not a victory, and August's conditions were real, and 12 months was a long time, and 100 things could go wrong. See, not relief either. Something more complicated. The feeling of having said a true thing to a powerful person and having the powerful person hear it imperfectly and conditionally and with strings attached, but hear it. See, it was a beginning. He thought it was a beginning. See, he went to his room and wrote Alara a note and gave it to the houseboy to deliver in the morning. See, the note said, Henderson, 1 year. He said yes. Alara received it at 7 in the morning on Saturday while she was heating water for Maeve's tea. See, she read it twice. She set it on the table. She finished heating the water. See, then she sat down and let herself feel, for approximately 30 seconds, the full weight of what it meant, not as a victory, because she was too clear-eyed for that, but as a shift. See, something had moved that had not moved before. August Calloway had looked at an argument assembled by the laundress's daughter and a boy who wasn't supposed to care about such things, and he had moved. See, not far, not generously, but he had moved 30 seconds. See, then she got up and started thinking about what the Henderson Ranch would need in the first quarter. See, she was still thinking about it when Red appeared at the door of the laundry room below their rooms at 9 that morning. See, he had not sent word that he was coming. He simply appeared in his good coat and mud-spattered boots, looking like someone who had not slept particularly well but had gotten up anyway. See, Maeve opened the door. The two of them looked at each other. See, Maeve Voss and Rhett Calloway had not been in the same room since the Tuesday deliveries. When the Calloway laundry came, and Rhett sometimes helped carry it in from the wagon. See, which he did because August had told him to understand every aspect of an operation, and Rhett had taken that instruction much more literally than August intended. See, Mrs. Voss, Rhett said. Maeve looked at him for a moment with the particular measuring quality she had when she was deciding something. See, then she stepped back from the door. Come in, she said. See, he came in and stood in the small kitchen with his hat in his hands literally, which Alara had never seen him do, and she had the strange observation that he was nervous, which she had also not seen, not exactly like this. See, not the social nervousness of a person uncertain of their reception in someone else's home. See, sit down, Maeve said. She said it not unkindly. He sat. See, Maeve poured him tea without asking and sat across from him and looked at him. See, Alara stood at the counter and watched this exchange with the specific tension of a person whose two worlds are occupying the same room for the first time. See, my daughter tells me you presented something important yesterday, Maeve said. See, we did, Rhett said. Together she did the research. See, most of it, Rhett said. She wouldn't let me claim equal credit. See, Maeve's mouth did something that was almost a smile. See, no, she said. She wouldn't. Mrs. Voss, Rhett said, and his voice had the quality of someone choosing words carefully, not because he was managing a situation, but because he genuinely wanted to get this right. See, I want you to know that what your daughter did, what she figured out from the census records, the wage analysis, it convinced my father to try something different on one of our ranches. See, I don't know yet how it'll go, but something is going to change because she did the work she did. See, Maeve looked at him steadily. Will it change anything for the people currently working that ranch? See, that's the intention, Rhett said. Intention and result are different things, Maeve said. See, yes, ma'am, he said, I know. Maeve was quiet for a moment. See, then she stood and picked up her mending basket and said, I have work to do, which was her way of indicating that the conversation had concluded to her adequate satisfaction and that she was now trusting Alara to manage the rest of it. See, she left them in the kitchen. Alara sat across from Rhett at the table. See, they looked at each other across the same space where she had sat alone the night after the Copper Crown, where she had told herself the burning in her eyes was just the wind. See, 1 year, she said, 1 year, he said. Henderson. See, I'm going to need your help. I'm not a ranch manager, she said. See, no, he said, but you understand the numbers better than anyone Simmons has on staff. See, and the men will need to understand what they're being offered and why. See, someone will need to explain it in a way that he stopped. See, in a way that doesn't sound like charity, he said. See, she understood immediately what he meant. See, if the profit share arrangement was presented as Rhett Calloway being magnanimous, it would be received as largesse and treated accordingly with suspicion and a baseline assumption that it could be revoked at any moment. See, it needed to be presented as what it actually was, a structural change with documented rationale, an arrangement where the worker's stake in the outcome was real and the terms were defined and binding. See, you'd need it in writing, she said. Formal contracts. See, not a handshake. My father will resist that. Your father responded to documented arithmetic, Alara said. See, give him documented arithmetic on why written contracts reduce turnover versus verbal arrangements. See, I'll find the data. You'll find the data, he repeated, with a look that was partly amused and partly genuinely wondering. See, It exists somewhere, she said. Everything exists somewhere if you're willing to walk far enough to find it. See, he looked at her across the small kitchen table in the morning light that came through the single window above the basin. And she looked back. See, and there was a quality in that moment that she was not prepared to name yet, a recognition that had been building over 3 weeks, and a dinner, and a presentation, and a cold hallway, and a shared argument about passive versus active voice that, see, was too large and too unresolved to examine directly. See, she looked down at her tea. We start with the wage structure, she said. See, I'll need access to the Henderson payroll records. See, I can get them, he said, without August knowing. See, he thought about it. He told me to run the pilot, he said. See, he didn't specify that I had to hide my methods. See, good, she said. Bring them next Wednesday. Library 4:30. See, you have mending until 4, he said. She looked up. See, he remembered. She hadn't expected him to remember. See, until 4, she said, 4:30, don't be late. See, he was not late. The year that followed was the kind of year that looks, from the outside, like a series of practical problems being solved one at a time. See, payroll restructuring, contract drafting, 3 separate meetings with Henderson's senior hands. See, the first of which went poorly because a man named Bart Cully, who had worked the Callaway ranches for 8 years, didn't believe the arrangement was real and said so loudly in front of the others. See, Rhett didn't argue with him. He put the signed contract on the table and said the terms were fixed and Cully could sign or not sign, but either way the terms were what they were. See, Cully looked at the contract for a long time. He was not a man who read easily. His literacy was functional and slow, and watching him read, it was its own kind of thing. See, Elara was not in the room for that meeting, because her presence would have changed its dynamic in ways that would not have been useful. See, but Rhett told her about it afterward, and she recognized without him saying, so that he had sat there and waited without impatience while Cully read, because you didn't rush a man through the first contract he'd ever been offered. See, Cully signed. 3 others signed the same day. The remaining 2 signed the following week after Cully told them what was in it. See, by spring, 2 men who had left the Henderson operation the previous year came back. See, not because of sentiment, because word had traveled, the way word traveled in working communities through the channels that didn't appear in any newspaper and didn't get reported to anyone, but were more reliable than any official communication. See, the channels of men talking to each other about what was real and what wasn't. See, productivity improved, not dramatically, not all at once. See, it improved the way things improve when the root problem is addressed, rather than the symptoms steadily and without fanfare, visible only in the quarterly numbers that Rhett presented to August at the end of March. See, August looked at the numbers for a long time. Theft is down 40%, he said. See, yes, Rhett said. That's not in the productivity figures. See, no, Rhett said. It's a separate line. I wanted you to see it separately. See, because theft decreases when people have a stake in the outcome, August said slowly. See, because men don't steal from something they own a piece of, Rhett said. See, that's not a sentiment, that's documented in the numbers. See, August set the report down. He was quiet for what felt like a very long time. See, where's the contract documentation, he said. The formal agreements. See, Rhett produced them. August read through 2 of them with the focused attention he gave to legal documents slowly, precisely, looking for the thing that would tell him whether the structure was sound or merely hopeful. See, he read them because Elara had drafted them. He did not know she had drafted them. See, Rhett had told August that he had worked with a member of Simmons' staff to formalize the language, which was not a lie exactly. He had involved Simmons' clerk in the final review, but it was not the complete truth either. See, the complete truth was that Elara had spent 4 evenings at the kitchen table above the laundry, with law books borrowed from the county clerk's office and a patience for fine language that Rhett frankly did not have. See, drafting the contract structures that were now holding up under August's scrutiny. See, August looked up from the contracts. These are well constructed, he said. See, he said it as pure assessment without emphasis. The way you say 2 plus 2 is 4 because it is, and the facts don't require decoration. See, thank you, Rhett said. August looked at him. Expand it, August said. See, to Millstone as well. Same structure, adjusted for the different operation. See, Rhett was careful not to change his expression. All right, he said. See, and Rhett, August said. He rarely used his son's name. See, the research capacity you've been using. The analysis. See, Rhett was very still. I want to know where it's coming from, August said. See, not as an accusation, as a question. The room was quiet. See, Rhett thought about the kitchen table above the laundry. See, he thought about Ilara's handwriting in the margins of the census records. See, he thought about the 4-hour walk to the territorial office and back, and the borrowed law books, and the drafts crossed out and rewritten, and the argument about passive versus active voice. See, Ilara Voss, he said. August looked at him. The laundress's daughter, August said. See, the woman who understood your empire better than your accountants, Rhett said. See, yes. August was quiet for a long time, longer than his usual pauses. See, she should be compensated, he said finally. See, it came out almost reluctantly, not because he didn't mean it, Rhett thought, but because meaning it required him to acknowledge something about what she was and what she'd done that cost him something to acknowledge. See, what she contributed to the Henderson restructuring has monetary value. See, it should be reflected. She'll refuse payment, Rhett said. See, then offer her something she can't refuse, August said. See, she wants to teach. I heard her say so at the presentation. He picked up his pen. See, I sit on the board of the new school committee. There's a position opening. See, a real position with a salary. He looked at his son directly. See, if she's as capable as what I'm looking at suggests, she is more useful to this town in a classroom than washing linens. See, Rhett looked at his father. He had been prepared for many versions of this conversation. See, he had rehearsed mentally responses to resistance and dismissal, and the many forms of August Calloway saying no. See, he had not rehearsed a response to this. You'd have to tell the committee, Rhett said carefully. See, they'll ask why. I'll tell them I reviewed her work, August said. See, which is true. They'll know she's Maeve Voss's daughter. See, yes, August said they will. He looked at his son. See, and they'll know that Maeve Voss's daughter wrote contracts that held up to my personal review. See, those two pieces of information will do their own work. See, Rhett left the meeting and walked 3 blocks to the laundry room below the Voss apartment and knocked on the door. See, Maeve answered, flour on her hands, because she had begun taking on baking orders for the hotel alongside the laundry. See, because survival required constant reinvention, and Maeve Voss had been reinventing herself since her husband died and showed no sign of stopping. See, she's upstairs, Maeve said. He went up. Ilara was at the kitchen table with the Henderson second quarter projections spread across it, making notes in her cramped, careful handwriting. See, she looked up when he came in, read his face, and set down her pencil. See, what happened, she said. He told her. All of it. See, August's review of the numbers, the expansion to Millstone, the contracts. See, and then the last part. She was quiet for a long time when he finished. See, a teaching position, she said. Real salary, he said. See, not charity. He used the word compensated. He said your work had monetary value. See, he said that. She looked at the projections on the table. See, August Calloway said the work had monetary value. See, he said you understood his empire better than his accountants. See, she looked at the table for another moment. See, then she looked up, and her eyes were very bright, not with tears exactly, but with something adjacent to it, the expression of a person who has been carrying something heavy for a long time and has just had someone acknowledge the weight. See, I'll need to sit the certification examination, she said. See, I know. I haven't finished my coursework. I know that too. See, Rhett, she said. What? She looked at him across the cluttered table, with the projections between them and the borrowed law books stacked against the wall and the sound of Maeve moving around downstairs. See, your father is not a good man, she said carefully. See, he's done real harm to real people, and the Henderson numbers don't erase that. See, I need you to know I'm not revising the history because he did one correct thing. See, I know, Rhett said. I'm not either, but she said. See, but he agreed. She looked at him for a moment longer. See, he moved. She said. That matters, not because he's good. See, because he moved. Yes, Rhett said. She picked up her pencil. See, sit down, she said. I need help with the millstone projections. See, he sat down. He pulled the millstone file from the stack. See, they worked. Outside, Red Willow moved through its ordinary Saturday afternoon, the commerce and the weather, and the social traffic of a frontier town doing what frontier towns did, which was survive and argue and build and tear down and try again. See, inside, above the laundry room, with flour faintly in the air from Maeve's baking below. See, Alara Voss and Rhett Calloway bent over the numbers of a ranch that was going to work differently, because one of them had been willing to walk 4 hours on a dirt road and the other had been willing to sit down at the wrong table. See, the Henderson contract renewals came back fully signed in the second year. See, all of them. Bart Cully signed first. The millstone operation followed the same trajectory, slower at first and then faster, the productivity curve bending in the direction the numbers had predicted it would. See, August said nothing for a long time about any of it. See, he reviewed the reports. He asked specific questions about specific figures. See, he did not praise and he did not concede because August Calloway did not concede things verbally when he could simply adjust his behavior and let the adjustment speak. See, but he adjusted his behavior, and in the way of things that happened slowly and without announcement, the Calloway ranches began to change. See, not completely, not without backsliding, not without the specific grinding difficulty of any system that is trying to operate differently from the one it was built to be. See, but change was occurring measurably. See, in the quarterly figures and in the turnover rates, and in the fact that Bart Cully's son came to work on the Henderson property at 17 and signed his own contract and was still there at 22 and had purchased. See, under the terms of the long service arrangement, 4 acres at the eastern edge of the property. See, 4 acres of Wyoming dirt in Cully's son's name. See, in the ledger. In the county record, not invisible. See, Alara sat her certification examination in the spring of the second year and passed with the highest score the examining board had recorded in 6 years, which was noted in the Red Willow Courier in a small item on the 3rd page. See, the item identified her as a graduate of the Red Willow Territorial Academy and did not mention Maeve Voss at all, which was its own kind of progress and its own kind of insufficiency simultaneously. See, she accepted the teaching position. She told her mother on a Tuesday evening, at the kitchen table with the tea warm and the lamp lit. See, Maeve listened. Then she looked at her hands, those hands that had spent 12 years and more in scalding water and lye, and she turned them over, palms up, and she looked at them for a long moment. See, she didn't say anything. She didn't need to. Alara understood what the silence contained. See, you're not doing this anymore, Alara said. Not for other families. See, not for survival. I'm good at it, Maeve said quietly. See, you're good at a lot of things, Alara said. You're going to find out which ones you choose because you want to. See, Maeve looked at her daughter for a long moment. When did you get so certain about things? She said. See, I'm not certain, Alara said. I just stopped waiting for permission. See, Maeve's mouth did that thing that was almost a smile. See, she picked up her tea. Your father would have liked him, she said. See, Alara went very still. Rhett, Maeve said simply. See, not as an accusation, not with ceremony. Just as a truth she had been holding for a while and had decided it was time to set down on the table where they could both see it. See, he would have liked him. Alara looked at her mother. See, he's not perfect, Alara said. Nobody is, Maeve said. See, that's not what I said. See, they sat with that for a moment, the two of them, in the small kitchen that had seen every version of their life together, the hard winters and the counted coins and the borrowed books and the mending at midnight and all the ordinary, see, unglamorous endurance that had brought them to this particular Tuesday evening with warm tea and a teaching contract and 4 acres of Wyoming dirt in a working man's name in the county record. See, outside, the town continued. Inside, something had shifted so quietly and so completely that it would take both of them some time to understand exactly what it was. See, Maeve finished her tea. She stood up. Go to bed, she said. See, you've got school tomorrow. Alara looked at her. See, Mama, she said. See, go to bed, Maeve said again, and this time there was something in her voice that was soft and certain and final, the voice of a woman who had spent years surviving and had finally, carefully, begun to believe in something beyond survival. See, Ilara went to bed. She lay in the dark and thought about Bart Cully's son and his 4 acres and the contract in his name in the county record. See, and she thought about August Calloway sitting in the second row of the presentation hall, standing alone while the room applauded. See, and she thought about Rhett's face when he said one ranch, and she saw in it something she had not known how to name then and was beginning to be able to name now. See, and she thought about her silver dollar in her purse and the white tablecloth and the night that had started everything. See, she fell asleep to the sound of the wind off the mountains, which was the kind of cold that meant what it said. See, 3 years is a long time, and not long at all, depending on what you're measuring. See, in 3 years, a child learns to walk and talk and develops opinions about things. See, in 3 years, a war can begin and end and leave behind a landscape nobody recognizes. See, in 3 years, a frontier town can change its posture not completely, not without resistance, not without the specific backsliding that accompanies any shift in how a community has decided to understand itself but change. See, genuinely and measurably, in ways that show up not just in the quarterly ledgers of cattle operations, but in the smaller, harder-to-document ways that matter more. See, Red Willow changed, not because anyone declared it changed. See, not because a newspaper ran a commemorative piece or a politician gave a speech. See, it changed the way most real change happens, through accumulated small decisions made by individual people who had been shown. See, by example or by arithmetic, or by the particular force of watching someone else do something they'd thought was impossible, that a different arrangement was available. See, Bart Cully's son was still on the Henderson property. See, he had 4 acres in his name in the county record, and a wife and a daughter born the previous spring. See, he had named the daughter Margaret. See, which no one at the Calloway main house knew was the same name as the laundress, who had appeared in Elara's census research, the woman who had worked 12 years and died, with her name appearing once in the public record. See, Elara knew. She had looked at the birth announcement in the Courier and sat with it for a long time before she understood whether she was going to cry or not. See, she was not. She was going to write it in the margin of her teaching notes, which she did, and then she was going to close the notebook and go teach her morning class, which she also did. See, the school itself was the thing nobody had entirely predicted. See, not the physical building, a school building, was a school building, but what the school became in the 3 years since Alara had taken her position. See, she had been hired as a teacher. Within 18 months, she was running the curriculum. See, within 2.5 years, the board, in a meeting that August Calloway attended and did not speak against, had given her the headmistress position. See, she was 21 years old. See, the board member who raised the objection, a man named Forsyth, ran the grain exchange and had opinions about proper sequencing of professional achievement, said she was too young and lacked the administrative solutions the position required. See, August Calloway looked at Forsyth across the boardroom table and said, with the particular flatness he used when he was ending a conversation rather than having one, see, she designed the contract structure that turned the Henderson operation into our most profitable property. See, I'd like to know what administrative experience you think she's missing. See, Forsyth did not answer. Alara was appointed headmistress. See, she found out from Rhett, who had been at the meeting. See, he told her in the library, not the school library, but the town library where Mrs. See, Cord still brought tea without being asked, and Alara's first response was to look at her hands on the table for a moment. See, then she said, "Your father spoke for me." He corrected a factual error, Rhett said. See, he does that. It isn't the same thing. No, Rhett said. See, it isn't. but it's what he has. She understood what Rhett meant. See, August Calloway was not going to become a different kind of person at 53. See, he was not going to develop warmth that he had spent his life specifically not developing. See, what he could do, what he had been doing, slowly and without announcement, over the past 3 years, was apply the considerable weight of his judgment and his credibility to things he had concluded were correct. See, he had concluded, from the evidence she had assembled and the results it had produced, that Alara Voss was correct about more things than most people he dealt with professionally. See, he acted accordingly. It was not friendship, it was not redemption. See, it was August Calloway doing the most honest thing his particular nature allowed, which was to follow the arithmetic wherever it led, even when it led somewhere that cost him something to acknowledge. See, he still underpays his household staff, Alara said. See, I know, Rhett said. We're working on it. We, she said. See, I brought him the numbers last month, Rhett said. See, he looked at the turnover in the house accounts and the cost of replacing trained domestic staff versus adjusting the baseline pay. He paused. See, he's thinking about it. He's been thinking about it for a month, Alara said. See, he thinks slowly about things that cost him pride, Rhett said. See, you know that. She did know that. She had learned the architecture of August Calloway's resistance over 3 years of working adjacent to it, learned which walls were structural and which were cosmetic. See, learned where the actual load-bearing beliefs were versus where he was simply performing conviction out of habit. See, she had not softened her assessment of him, but she had developed an accurate one, which was different from a charitable one and more useful. See, the household staff, she said, I'll put together a comparison analysis. See, regional rates versus current pay. If I give it to you formatted the way the Henderson reports were formatted, he'll read it in that register. See, he'll know you wrote it, Rhett said. Let him know, she said. See, 3 years ago she would have worried about what it meant for August Calloway to know she was still compiling analyses of his operations. See, 3 years ago, a great many things would have worried her that didn't worry her anymore, not because the world had gotten safer, but because she had gotten more accurate about what the actual risks were versus, see, what she had been trained by circumstance to fear. See, Rhett was looking at her with that expression she had, finally, sometime in the second year, found the right word for. See, it was the expression of a person who is looking at someone they are entirely certain about, in a world full of things they are not entirely certain about. See, it was a specific kind of relief and a specific kind of steadiness, and she had started recognizing it because she felt the same thing when she looked at him, though she was slower to acknowledge it because she was, see, by temperament and by the education of her particular history, slower to trust the things she wanted. See, I need to tell you something, he said. She looked at him. See, my father is stepping back from the operations, he said. See, not all at once, not officially yet, but he told me last week that he wants me to begin taking primary responsibility for the holdings by the end of this year. He paused. See, he said he's not retiring. He said he's transitioning his attention. See, he's 60 years old, Alara said. 54, Rhett said. See, he looks 60, she said. He runs 4 ranches and a railroad negotiation and 2 county board seats, Rhett said. See, it ages a person. What does that mean for you, she said. See, practically, it means I need to decide some things, he said. See, about what the Calloway holdings look like in 10 years. See, about what I'm actually trying to build here, as opposed to what I've inherited. See, he was not speaking abstractly. She understood that. See, he was speaking about a decision he had already made and was in the process of telling her, which was different from asking her opinion. See, and she had learned enough about Rhett Calloway by now to know when he was reporting a conclusion versus working one out. See, and she said, he looked at her across the library table. See, I'm going to expand the profit share structure to all 7 properties, he said. See, not phase it in, all of them, same calendar year. See, I've run the numbers 6 ways and the model holds. He paused. See, my father knows. He didn't stop me. He didn't stop you, Alara said. See, or he agreed. He said it was my decision to make, Rhett said. See, from him, that's agreement. She thought about that for a moment. See, about August Calloway saying it was his son's decision to make, and what it had cost a man like August to say that, and whether that cost was something she was allowed to respect, even from someone she did not consider good. See, she had thought about that question a great deal over 3 years. See, she had not arrived at a clean answer. She suspected clean answers to that kind of question were available only to people who hadn't been close enough to the situation to understand its actual texture. See, what she had arrived at was this: you could hold two true things simultaneously. See, August Calloway had done real harm over many years to many people, and that harm did not disappear. See, August Calloway had also, in his particular and limited and self-interested way, moved. See, both of those things were real. The second did not cancel the first. See, but the first did not make the second meaningless either. See, she had started teaching that to her students, not the specific story, but the principle. See, that moral reality was usually more complicated than the categories we preferred. See, that a person could be genuinely wrong about important things and still be capable of correction. See, that correction was not the same as redemption, but was not nothing either. See, that the work of changing things was slow and impure and did not deliver satisfying narratives, and you did it anyway. See, some of her students understood this immediately. Some of them would not understand it for 20 years. See, she understood it now because she had lived it, which was the only way most people ever understood anything that mattered. See, tell me about the timeline, she said, for the expansion. See, he told her. They worked until Mrs. Cord turned the lamp down at closing. See, the thing that happened between Alara and Rhett was not, in the end, a dramatic event. See, there was no moment of declaration in a thunderstorm or gesture of grand romantic scale. See, what happened was that over 3 years of shared work and honest disagreement and the accumulated experience of watching each other handle difficult things without flinching, see, they had become the person the other one most wanted to talk to about anything that mattered. See, it announced itself quietly, the way real things often do. See, she had stayed late at the school one evening, working on the following term's curriculum. It was a Wednesday in November, 4 years after the Copper Crown dinner. See, and the school was empty except for her and the particular silence of a building full of children-shaped spaces waiting to be filled again in the morning. See, Rhett had come by because he had meant to catch her before she left and had misjudged the time. See, he sat in one of the student chairs while she finished her notes. See, which was a comical image that she was aware of the heir to the largest cattle operation in the valley, folded into a 12-year-old's chair at a school desk, but that she did not comment on because they were past the, see, point of commenting on each other's incongruities. See, when she finished, she looked up. He was watching her. See, not with the expression she had catalogued in the library over 3 years. See, with something older than that expression, something underneath it that had been there, she suspected, for longer than either of them had been prepared to address. See, I need to say something, he said. All right, she said. See, he got out of the student chair with the slight awkwardness of someone who had been in it too long, and he stood in the aisle between the school desks. See, and he looked at her with no performance in it, no arrangement of his face toward anything except the truth he was trying to say. See, I'm not good at this, he said. I know, she said. See, I'm better at arithmetic than sentiment. You're better at both than you think, she said. See, but go ahead. He looked at her. I have been trying to do something worth doing since the night I sat down across from you in the Copper Crown. See, not because you needed me to, because watching you be exactly what you are made me want to be more accurately what I am. He stopped. See, started again. I am better at everything that matters when you're in the room. See, not because you fix things for me, because you are honest. See, genuinely, specifically, sometimes uncomfortably honest. See, and I have spent my whole life in a world where almost nothing is honest, and being near someone who is has been, he paused. See, it has been necessary, he said. You have been necessary. See, It was not a beautiful speech. It had false starts and imprecise language, and it stopped before it fully arrived at its destination. See, it was also the most accurate thing she had ever been told about herself by another person, which made it more effective than beauty would have been. See, she was quiet for a moment. "You're necessary too," she said. See, in case that was unclear. He looked at her. "It was not entirely clear," he said. "See, I'm aware," she said. "I'm working on that." See, they looked at each other in the empty classroom, with the student desks in their rows, and the maps on the wall, and the November cold pressing against the windows, and it was entirely ordinary and entirely not. See, the way the most significant moments usually are when you're inside them rather than looking back on them from a distance. "See, I want to ask you something," he said. "Ask," she said. "See," he asked. Not yet what he would eventually ask in the Copper Crown. See, something preliminary and honest, whether she would stop keeping him at the specific professional distance she had maintained for 4 years. See, not because the distance had been wrong, it had been appropriate, and she had been right to maintain it, but because they were both finished pretending it was all there was. See, she thought about Maeve saying her father would have liked him. See, she thought about the library and the 4-hour walk and the margin width and the passive voice argument. See, she thought about Bart Cully reading a contract slowly and carefully and then signing his name. See, yes, she said. It was, as beginnings went, less dramatic than the Copper Crown and more honest. See, which was how it should have been. Which was how she was learning everything worth having tended to arrive, not with ceremony, but with the steady weight of something real. See, 2 years after that Wednesday in the empty classroom, Red Willow had changed enough that the change had become visible to people who hadn't been watching closely. See, the school enrollment had doubled. Not because the population had doubled, it hadn't, but because families who had previously not sent their children, see, for reasons that combined economics and the sense that education was not designed with their children in mind, had started sending them. See, Elara had revised the curriculum in ways that Forsyth, the grain merchant, had formally objected to at 2 consecutive board meetings and lost both times. See, she had added the census records to the history curriculum. See, not as a supplemental text, as a primary source. Her students learned to read them the way she had learned, looking for the names that appeared once and then disappeared, learning to ask what those names represented. See, learning to understand that what was not in the official record was itself a kind of document, a record of what a society had decided did not need to be preserved. See, some parents complained. She met with them and explained the methodology and then continued. See, Maeve had stopped taking laundry 2.5 years ago. See, she had started, gradually, and with the tentative quality of someone who had been moving in crisis mode for so long that safety felt suspicious, doing other things. See, she had a kitchen garden that had gotten out of hand in the best possible way. See, she had started helping at the school on Thursday afternoons, not in an official capacity, but because she appeared and was useful, and nobody suggested she stop. See, she worked with the younger students on practical mathematics, which she had learned from years of managing a household on numbers that didn't add up, which turned out to be better preparation than formal instruction. See, she was teaching. She would have laughed if anyone called it that. See, but she was, and the children who had her on Thursday afternoons were better at fractions by the end of the term than the children who didn't. See, Elara watched her mother sit across a small desk from a 9-year-old boy named Thomas who couldn't figure out how to divide a sum into equal portions, and she watched Maeve take the problem apart patiently and methodically, see, her scarred hands moving a pencil across the paper. And she thought about what her mother had been before. She became what necessity made her, and what she might have become in a different arrangement. See, and she felt the specific grief of that realization and the specific gratitude of this moment simultaneously, and she let herself feel both because she had learned that refusing one of them didn't honor the other. See, August Calloway had his first heart event in the spring of that year. See, not a fatal one. The doctor called it a warning, which was the kind of language that should have been chilling and somehow, with August, felt almost redundant. He had been giving everyone around him warnings for 54 years. See, he survived, he recovered, he was quieter afterward. See, not diminished, his mind was as precise as it had always been, but quieter, in the way that people get quiet after a significant shock, which was not sentiment but recalibration. See, he had looked at something and revised his estimate of how much time he had and was adjusting accordingly. See, Rhett visited him every Sunday morning. Ilara joined him twice a month. See, these visits were not warm. See, August was not a man who had learned warmth late in life, because some things are formed too early and too deeply to be reformed. You can change behavior, but you cannot always change the underlying temperature of a person. See, but the visits were real. They talked about the operations and the school and the county board. See, August asked questions about the curriculum and listened to the answers with the full attention he gave to legal documents. See, he made 2 donations to the school, not large ones. See, and not announced, and when Ilara thanked him directly for the second one, he looked at her as though the thanks were mildly inconvenient and said the infrastructure had a structural deficit that was affecting property values in the surrounding area. See, which was a statement of pure August Calloway that she accepted at face value and then recognized for what it also contained. See, he's proud of you, Rhett told her once, walking home from one of those Sunday visits. See, he's satisfied with outcomes, she said. From my father, that's the same thing. See, she thought about that. Is it enough, she said. Not about August specifically. See, about all of it. About the Henderson Ranch and the Millstone property and the school enrollment and Maeve's kitchen garden and Margaret Hoyle's name in the census record that nobody had erased. See, it's enough for now, Rhett said. It's not enough eventually. See, but enough for now is the only kind of enough that's actually available. See, she looked at him. That's very wise, she said. Whose idea was that? See, yours, he said. Approximately 2 years ago, in the library. See, you were talking about the pace of the Henderson changes, and I wrote it down. See, she had forgotten she'd said it. She was glad someone had been paying attention. See, it was winter when Rhett asked her to meet him at the Copper Crown Hotel. See, he sent a note which arrived at the school on a Tuesday morning, and which she read twice before folding it into her desk drawer and not thinking about it for the rest of the teaching day. See, except that she thought back at that consistently for the rest of the teaching day in the background of everything else she was doing. See, the note said dinner Friday, 7 o'clock, Copper Crown. See, I'll be there. The last 3 words were underlined. See, she recognized the reference. She suspected he had labored over whether to include it and then included it because he was honest. See, Friday evening came with a cold that was the real Wyoming kind, not theatrical, not building to anything, just present and serious and indifferent to anyone's plans. See, she walked the 12 blocks. Her coat was not the thin one from 4 years ago. See, she had replaced it 2 winters back with something that actually kept the weather out, which was a practical improvement she had not spent more than 30 seconds appreciating and was spending some time appreciating now. See, she arrived at 7. She walked through the entrance of the Copper Crown Hotel, and the man looked at her, not at her, and said, "Good evening." See, Miss Voss. Because she was known now in Red Willow in a way that had nothing to do with whose daughter she was. See, she was shown to the table. Rhett was there. He was early, which she noticed, because he had learned to be early for things that mattered over the past 4 years, and the fact that he was early was its own kind of communication. See, he had dressed carefully without overdoing it. He stood when she arrived, which he also learned somewhere in those 4 years, not as performance, but as the kind of small, consistent respect that compounds over time into something you can depend on. See, the table was the same table, or close enough to it. See, she didn't know whether he had specifically requested it. See, she didn't ask. She sat down. They looked at each other. See, you're on time, he said. I'm always on time, she said. See, you were 10 minutes late to the library 3 years ago, he said. See, Mrs. Farley's arthritis, she said. I explained that. See, you explained it afterward, he said, which is the Alara Voss version of an apology. See, I don't apologize for things that weren't my fault, she said. See, no, he said. You don't, they ordered. The waiter, not the same waiter as 4 years ago, that man had moved on to a hotel in Cheyenne, brought their food without ceremony, the ordinary, competent rhythm of a well-run kitchen. See, they ate and talked about the things they always talked about, which were also not ordinary things, the Millstone Spring projections, the new teacher she was considering hiring for the upper grades. See, the county commissioner's proposal about road improvements along the northern grazing routes, and whether the improvements would benefit the ranches or primarily benefit the railroad supply lines. See, which were different questions dressed in the same language. See, they argued about the road proposal for 11 minutes, which she noted to herself without saying so. See, the food was finished. The waiter brought the bill. See, Rhett slid it toward her. She looked at him. He was watching her with that expression, the one that had taken her a year to name, and she had since found inadequate words for, because the words available were too small for what it actually contained. See, certainty, steadiness, the look of a person who has decided something and is not going to undecide it. See, she reached into her purse. Her fingers found it immediately, because she always knew where it was. See, she had carried it for 6 years, the same silver dollar. See, cool and solid and heavier than a coin had any right to be, given everything it had accumulated. See, she had almost spent it twice, once in the second year, when the school supplies budget had run short and she was covering the gap from her salary. See, and once in the first winter after she stopped her mending work before the teaching income had fully stabilized. See, both times she had put it back. Both times she had found another solution. See, she placed it on the white tablecloth. See, the same way she had placed it on the same tablecloth 6 years ago, except that nothing was the same, not the tablecloth, not the room, not the town outside the windows, not herself, not him, not what the dollar represented. See, she looked at the bill. 90 cents. She looked at Rhett. See, keep the change, she said. He looked at the dollar on the table for a moment. See, then he looked at her, and his expression did something she hadn't seen before. It folded slightly, like something that had been held very straight for a long time being allowed to ease. See, not weakness, the opposite. The look of someone whose guard has come down, not because they were defeated, but because they no longer needed it. See, Alara, he said. Yes, she said. He reached into his jacket pocket. See, he set something on the table beside her dollar, small. See, wrapped in cloth. She looked at it. She looked at him. See, I am not doing this because you need rescuing, he said. See, his voice was even but not without effort. I'm not doing it because I need a rebellion or a statement or anything I need to prove to anyone. See, I am doing this because I have spent 6 years watching you walk toward the true version of things every single time, even when the true version was difficult, and I want to spend the rest of my life doing that with you. See, not for you, with you. She did not say anything immediately. See, we disagree constantly, she said. We do, he said. See, you're still too slow on the household staff compensation, she said. See, I have a timeline, he said. Your timelines need timelines, she said. See, I know, he said. Your father will never fully understand what he built on, she said. See, and we are both going to have to live with that. See, I know that too, he said. And I'm headmistress of a school that your family partially funds, she said, and I intend to continue running it exactly as I see fit, and the funding does not change that. See, I would expect nothing different, he said. I would argue with you about it sometimes. See, I know you would, she said. She was quiet for a moment. See, I was going to get there, she said, in my own time. See, I know, he said. I waited. He had waited. See, she thought about that, the specific patience of someone who wanted something and had enough respect for the other person to wait until the other person was ready, and had not made his waiting into a performance of virtue or a form of pressure. See, he had simply been present and honest and patient. See, that was its own kind of love, she thought, the unglamorous kind. See, the kind that was worth something. Yes, she said. See, he exhaled. Good, he said. He picked up the silver dollar from the tablecloth and held it for a moment, and she let him hold it because she understood what he was holding. See. Then he set it back in front of her. Keep it, he said. See, I intend to, she said. They left the Copper Crown Hotel together, which was different from leaving it alone. See, the cold hit them both at the same time, and she did not shorten her step for him, and he did not lengthen his step for her. They simply walked at the same pace. See, which had been their natural pace since approximately the third week of working together in the library, and which required no adjustment from either of them. See, the town was doing what the town did on a Friday evening in winter. See, lights and windows. Voices from the saloon 2 blocks east. See, a dog barking at something in an alley. See, the ordinary, ongoing business of a community being itself all the private lives running parallel to each other, invisible to each other, each one enormous to the person living it, and incidental to everyone else. See, she thought about Margaret Hoyle, who had lived her whole enormous life in this town and left one mark in one ledger in 1 year. See, she thought about Bart Cully's daughter, who was 3 years old and did not know her name was Margaret and did not know why, and would grow up in a house on 4 acres of Wyoming dirt that belonged to her family. See, she thought about the silver dollar in her purse and what it had meant to carry it for 6 years, not sentiment, though it was partly sentiment, but also a kind of record. See, evidence that she had been in a room that tried to erase her and had not been erased. See, she thought about what she would teach her students tomorrow. See, not history specifically. The morning session was mathematics. See, she would teach them that numbers did not lie if you asked them the right questions, and that the skill was not in the calculation, but in knowing which question to ask. See, the school, when they passed it, was dark and locked and waiting for Monday. See, it was a solid building now, not grand, not ornate, but well-built and maintained, with a front door that opened without sticking in winter. See, she had fought for the budget to fix the door. It had taken 2 board meetings. See, some fights were about empires, some were about door frames. See, both required showing up. The silver dollar found its final home 6 months later, framed in glass on the wall just inside the school's main entrance, where every student who came through the door would see it. See, below it, on a small card written in Alara's handwriting, were the words she had chosen not because they were beautiful, but because they were true. See, your worth is never decided by the table that refuses you a seat. See, she had debated the wording for longer than she'd debated most of the school's policy documents. See, she had written 12 versions. Rhett had looked at all 12 and said this one was correct, and she had agreed, and then disagreed, and then come back to it a week later and agreed again, which was their established method for arriving at truth. See, the framing ceremony she resisted calling it a ceremony, she had tried to make it a simple installation, and it had become a ceremony anyway happened on a Wednesday afternoon, which was fitting. See, because Wednesdays were library days, and Wednesday afternoons were when she had first said 4:30, don't be late, and everything that mattered had proceeded from that. See, August attended. He was not asked, but he appeared, which was the August Calloway version of asking permission. See, he stood near the back while the students gathered. See, he watched Alara talk to them about the dollar and about the girl who had carried it and about what it meant to walk into a room that did not expect you and stay anyway. See, he did not speak during the ceremony. Afterward, when the students had dispersed and the parents were filing out, and Rhett was talking to Mrs. See, Cord, who had retired from the town library and now came to the school on Tuesdays, August approached Alara. See, she turned to face him. He looked at the framed dollar on the wall. See, he looked at it for a long moment with the full attention he gave to documents he was deciding whether to sign. See, my son, he said finally, made better decisions than I taught him to make. See, she looked at him. He made his own decision, she said. See, you taught him the capability. He chose the direction. See, August looked at her. She held his gaze. I owe you, he said, an acknowledgement I have not made directly. See, she waited. The analysis you built from the public records, he said. See, the argument about what labor is worth versus what it is paid. See, I dismissed it initially as sentiment. Dressed in numbers, he paused. See, it was not sentiment. It was accurate, and I understood my own operation less clearly than you did, from the outside, with public documents and a 4-hour walk. He said the last part without inflection, but not without weight. See, that is a significant thing to acknowledge. It is, she said. See, I'm acknowledging it, he said. I know, she said. See, he looked at the dollar on the wall one more time. See, then he looked at her with the assessment quality she had first seen at the Copper Crown dinner, the equation-solving look, except that the equation had changed. See, 6 years of evidence had changed it. The look was not the same as approval. See, it was something more uncomfortable and more real, the look of a man who had been wrong about a category, and knew he had been wrong about it, and had not fully made peace with what that meant about everything else he had been certain about. See, she did not need him to make peace with it. She did not need his approval or his redemption or his transformation into a different kind of person. See, she needed what he had already given, which was to move, partially and imperfectly, and for reasons that were not entirely altruistic, see, in a direction that had resulted in Bart Cully's son owning 4 acres, and Thomas learning fractions from Maeve on Thursday afternoons, and a school full of children who were learning to ask the right questions. See, that was enough for now. It was not enough eventually. See, but it was enough for now. August Calloway left the school. See, Red appeared at Alara's shoulder. How was that, he said. See, honest, she said, in his way. Rhett nodded. He looked at the framed dollar on the wall. See, it looks right there, he said. It does, she agreed. See, Maeve was waiting outside the school when they came out, standing in the cold with her coat buttoned and her hands in her pockets, not the raw, work-scared version of those hands that Alara had watched for 18 years. See, but the same hands in a different season, rested and warmer and holding themselves differently. See, not healed. That was the wrong word. Not healed, but occupied differently, which was its own kind of change. See, well, Maeve said. Alara looked at her mother. It's on the wall, she said. See, Maeve nodded. She looked at Rhett. She looked at her daughter. See, she did the thing with her mouth that was almost a smile, but was actually more than a smile, was the expression of a woman who had spent 20 years trying to make sure her daughter's life was larger than her own. See, and was standing in the specific, quiet satisfaction of having succeeded. See, she did not make a speech. Maeve Voss had never made speeches. See, she had made soup from what was left in the larder, and she had gotten up and done it again. See, and the result of all that unglamorous endurance was standing in front of her in the cold air outside a school that had her name and the dedication plaque inside. See, which Alara had put there without telling her, and which Maeve had discovered on the first day of term and not said anything about for 3 weeks until Alara asked directly. See, I saw it. Maeve had said then, and that was all. See, which was enough. See, outside the school now, the 3 of them stood in the winter air, and the town moved around them in its ordinary way. And Red Willow was not a different place from what it had been 6 years ago. But it was a changed one, and the change was real. See, and it had cost something, and it would require maintenance and argument, and the specific, grinding work of not letting things slide back to what was easier. See, that was the thing about real change that nobody liked to say. It wasn't an event. See, it was a practice. It was the thing you did every day after the dramatic moment had passed the unglamorous, undocumented, uncelebrated daily choosing of the harder version. See, the contract that needed renegotiating, the board member who needed correcting. See, the student who needed to be shown, one more time, that their name was worth keeping in the record. See, Alara knew this. She had always known this, in the bones-deep way you know things your circumstances taught you before you had language for them. See, she knew it the way Maeve knew it, the way Margaret Hoyle had known it without anyone ever thinking to write it down. See, she was going to write it down. She was, in fact, going to spend the next 40 years writing it down, in curriculum and in policy and in the annual school reports that the county filed, and that would become, eventually, see, part of the territorial record, the same kind of record she had once combed for names, except that these names would be there from the beginning, documented and counted and preserved. See, that was the plan. Not a grand plan, not a revolutionary manifesto. See, a plan made of Wednesdays and board meetings and quarterly reports and students who needed to know that the arithmetic of their worth was not determined by anyone else's ledger. See, she reached into her purse and felt the familiar weight of the silver dollar, which she had retrieved from Rhett. Before it was framed and replaced with a duplicate, she had never told him this, and he had never asked. See, and the dollar on the wall was real, but the dollar in her purse was also real, and she intended to carry it until she decided it was time to give it to someone who needed to carry it for a while. See, she hadn't decided yet who that would be. She had some ideas. See, the cold settled around them. The school door was closed. See, the town was doing what towns do. See, Alara Voss headmistress. See, credentialed. See, 23 years old. See, daughter of Maeve. See, future wife of Rhett Calloway. See, keeper of census records and margin with arguments, and the memory of a girl who had walked 12 blocks in a thin coat to be publicly humiliated by people who thought it was sport, reached over and took Rhett's hand. See, not dramatically, just took it, the way you take hold of something solid when you have decided to stay. See, he held on. Maeve said, "I'm cold, let's go." They went. See, and behind them, on the wall, just inside the door of the Red Willow School, a silver dollar in a glass frame caught the last of the winter light, and underneath it, in handwriting that did not apologize for being exactly what it was. See, 12 words that were not a motto or a slogan or a comfort, but simply the truth, cleaned of everything unnecessary. See, your worth is never decided by the table that refuses you a seat. See, it had taken one terrible dinner, 4 hours on a dirt road, 6 years of Wednesday afternoons, one imperfect man learning a different direction, one woman who had never waited for permission. See, and one silver dollar that was worth exactly $1, and also, depending on how you measured, something considerably more to put those 12 words on that wall. See, the measuring was the point, always the measuring. See, always the asking of the right question, always the refusal to accept someone else's ledger as the final record of what you were worth. See, Alara had learned that at 18, alone at a table in the Copper Crown Hotel, reading a note that was meant to erase her. See, she had spent every year since making sure other people didn't have to learn it the hard way. That was the work. That was always the work.